scale is just one part of the problem. And second, as I said, marketplace, right? When we open up user-generated content, anybody creating their own items, making them limited and putting up for sale, which is traded and retraded, how do you control that when there's millions of transactions every day? How do you make sure that it's not raced to the bottom? That itself is a complicated problem.
Extremely complicated. Race to the bottom. We've heard a lot about that in the internet lately. Let's not do it in Roblox, shall we? And Anthony, what about with developers? Is this when we get to talk about open cloud?
Sure, we can talk about open cloud. I think there are there's an idea I want to share. So the things that we release, we have users who are very advanced, running teams of 50 plus people, and some of the creators are more junior or younger. And so we have a spectrum of use cases that we need to support. And I think when we're making these world scale systems that are supported around the globe, I think it's very important that we get the user experience correctly. A lot like Kieran and Kavita have been talking about, it's actually key to making sure that the product succeeds is how the user is using it. And so as we're designing systems for the developers to operate their businesses, everything from I want a store that Alex is level 55 and Kavita is level 58, all the way to maybe progress or the creations that they're making within that game to how they host their customer support dashboards. We have to constantly think about different user perceptions. And so this is where we could try to solve that problem, but getting it right is nearly impossible. And I think it also changes over time. And that's why we really focused on empowering the developers to solve their own problems. If they're wanting to host a website and they need to interface with Roblox in a way, can we help them and build a first-class solution that allows for them to solve their own problems? And so this is where Open Cloud really what is making all of our cloud APIs accessible via the open internet through secure and modern authentication, so then they can solve their own problems. We've seen people build things in PHP all the way to the other side of the spectrum in JavaScript or something like that and interface with our cloud endpoints. And so this is a challenging thing while we're getting it right and seeing how the users adopt it. And so this is something that we're constantly iterating on.
Well, this leads me nicely into a question about mistakes that you have seen that either you have made and that you're willing to admit in a public forum on the record that you've made. Please, by all means, failure, et cetera. Or that other people have made that you've learned from. So I'm going to start.
Read us first? No.
No. You set yourself up for this one, so you go on, you dive in.
I think an example is when you build a system like a data storage system and we're tailoring it to people who want to just build something, we want to get their 0 to 1, 0 to 1 to 100 imagination going as fast as we can. Sometimes we've forgotten, hey, well, they might abuse the system. And I think this is an example where, they might just spam our system and overflow our databases or overload us from a scale perspective. And so we have to revisit that and we have to make sure that our systems are protected and aware of all the different uses and abuse vectors that are possible. When you're building these generic systems, there is a level of abuse that is quite open because if someone wanted to, they could abuse it. And so we have had incidents like this in the past, and we're always very responsive and try to our best. But it is something that's an ongoing challenge that will probably never end. It's a whack-a-mole game.
Yeah, it is. And so much of it is about sort of imagining unintended consequences, right? And I'm wondering how you do that at a high level, to look across the engineering team, to think about how you can cut off at the pass any unintended consequences.
Yeah, so I would say one of the best and hardest things about being at Roblox is the amount we scrutinize long-term plans and strategy. It's where myself and my peers kind of at the C level probably spend 80% of our time with the teams, with the idea that if we get that right, they know how to execute, they can get stuff right, going the right way. So, like the folks here, they're responsible for owning it, but they get, is grilled too strong, Look
at their faces. Hopefully not. Their faces say everything.
And we really poke and prod because we know that there's so many unintended consequences, particularly when your creator community can go do anything with the stuff, and like specifically the things you never imagined they would do. We do a lot of that. It goes back to some of those first principles I mentioned about we're not going to break anyone and so on. And so that's the majority of my job, of my peers' jobs, is really poke on that strategy, make sure it's really rock solid. There isn't a lot of And we'll figure that out when we get there. That doesn't fly much in Roblox. In many other companies, that's not just something that happens, it's a strength. It's the way you should run those companies. For Roblox, we take a little bit of a different approach that it's, no, we really want to think this through in all its myriad forms before we move forward.
So I want to go back and get more granular. You don't need to admit any of the grillings that Dan has done to you, Kavita, but do you have any examples of mistakes that have either been made here or that you have learned from, or mistakes elsewhere that you've learned from?
Oh, tons.
Great, we've got the rest of the afternoon.
So I think we tried launching ad product that didn't work quite well, and I get the philosophy of our C-levels now, because they don't want ads just to be these annoying, irritating thing that prevents you. You have to endure that, and then you go to your consumer experience. So that's why we are always challenges, especially with Dan, to think about, like, you're getting a chance to define what ads mean in metaverse. Why are you being boxed in terms of, like, you have to do it this way, like other ad tech companies have done. So I think, and a lot of things can go wrong in ads targeting, right? How do you make sure you're targeting the right audience, but also make sure that their security and privacy is protected? And Roblox is very serious about security and safety. So making sure the relevance of the ad and the safety is always a very tricky balance.
Just really make sure you tweak it as much as possible. An avatar.
Yeah.
Has
Avatar.
anybody's face melted off?
That would be a good effect.
When they didn't expect it.
Yeah, that would be an interesting effect. But I think the Roblox spin on this, and I think what's unique about thinking about the avatar problem from Roblox perspective is the how you define the schema. Again, the DNA. And that's something that Dan and Dave keep asking us at all the meetings. And the reason why that is important is, we tried introducing the facial stuff last year. And one of the things that we did not think through at that point in time was the internal some of the internal representation of how a face would move was exposed. And so there was a higher level way of controlling the face, and then which we wanted developers to use. And then there was the high level setup was driving a lower level representation, which was also exposed in that version that we put out as beta. And very quickly, we learned from the community that the community can do all kinds of unintended things if they had access to this lower level implementation. And even though that lower level implementation was always available in Roblox, the fact that you tied them together in a way that is super accessible allows them to do things that you wouldn't want them to do. So the moral of the story, at least our learning was, hey, abstract complexity out as much as possible, and only think very hard about what is being exposed to the community, and that ensures longevity of the API. And we learned it, and we changed it, and we relaunched it, and it was a good learning for us.
Yeah, it is always iterative when you're creating complexity. always iterative. I want to now look at some more brass tacks about how you guys build out your teams and how you ensure innovation happens within the teams. I mean, it definitely sounds like you bat around ideas amongst yourselves, I'm imagining, as well as within your team. So I want to find out a little bit more about that. Kavita, I wanted to come to you first to talk about that and how you are who with the innovation. No, we've mentioned just break it straight down. We don't need the articles and all of the other words in a sentence. But we talked a little bit about how economists are involved in some way with your teams, but also who are the other types of people that comprise the economy team?
So we have data science, we have engineers, we have, even in engineers, back-end machine learning, all sorts of engineers, front-end. We work very closely with QA and reliability engineers. And then, of course, product plays a very crucial part of the tweaks and pivots that are required in product. And coming back to innovation, it's a very interesting topic because I don't think that you wake up one day and have this brilliant idea. It is a very iterative process. And what we emphasize on is we launch a lot of experiments and we learn. It's a continuous learning experiment. So learning methodology where even an intern have a really good idea. How do you make sure that they are able to validate? And how does your experimentation framework scale? So you can launch on like certain percentage of your users and validate that data and bring it back to an experiment review and discuss it with the team. And that's how we learn and the bigger innovation actually happens.
That's fun, right? That means then it's almost like a lab where everybody has the opportunity to play around and poke around at a system, obviously within an enclosed space.
Right.
Does that ring true for the developer platform as well?
Yeah, I think that is a very important aspect, and we definitely do a lot of experimentation. I think one thing that I personally look for in engineers and in talent is that I want systems thinkers and people who are really passionate about products. So when I'm interviewing someone, I'll give you guys all a tip on how to pass an interview with Anthony, but I want someone who has strong opinions about a product and that will talk about the trade-offs. There's almost no perfect answer on a hard problem, and so it's about weighing the trade-offs, but about that product. And I think if an engineer has the technical ability to do the job as well as that trait, I think that I've seen a lot of success with that. So I always look for systems thinking and the passion for the product. And I think that's been a really great recipe for success.
If I could add to that.
Yeah, please.
Just something we do that I think it's a little bit unique. Innovation is so important here that even if you're fresh out of school and you're applying for a job here, one of the first things we have you do in the process is you go and you play a Roblox game. But this is a very special Roblox game backed by a bunch of learning scientists and psychologists, and it measures a bunch of things. It measures systems thinking, also measures innovation and problem solvability. And we do that because we thought about what is most important to success here at Roblox and a career at Roblox. And we hire folks straight out of school. We're hoping they'll be here 10 plus years, right? That's what we're really aiming for. I'm hoping today I'm hiring the person who in a few years will have my job, right? And innovation is so core to that success that it's built into that experiment. It's one of the first gates you get through before you kind of get in the standard, let's do a coding exercise and all that sort of stuff. And we actually weight it more than we weight coding performance and things like that. So it's really core and central to the way we think about talent in this company.
It's nice that you do have a company that has been around for a long time because you have been able to pick out those core essential features of what somebody can do as well, rather than just sort of throwing things at the wall. You've iterated that process as well, I'm imagining.
Right, and we're always, the innovation applies in a sense to how we do innovation. Like we're always thinking about how can we do innovation better and how do we change our own processes and do a better job with that. So we don't just leave the innovation at the technical front, but kind of on how we approach people, even compensation, so on. Like we're always trying to do a better job and improve the system we're building.
Kieran, tell me a little bit about how you build out your teams for innovation in Avatar.
Yeah, Avatars, I think, is a really focused area in some sense, with a lot of domain expertise in specific areas. So in my team, we have deep learning experts, and we have artists who have built these characters for movies and games and such. So a lot of deep understanding of what to build to produce a believable character. And you have engineers who are really strong in executing, iterating, optimizing, and deploying the algorithms that people produce and scale it. So it's three groups with three skill sets working closely together. And I think that's the key, is being able to understand that producing a believable character with a new medium like avatars requires you to actually, it's a brand new challenge, it's a new frontier. So it involves you working very closely together with other experts. So that's that ability to work across disciplines and to collaborate and deploy to developers and before users, and then be able to iterate based on feedback and scale across different devices. So that it's a lot of different things, but it's also what makes Roblox very special, because the appetite for doing something like this, even though it's really hard and challenging, the leadership understands that these things can take a long time, and as long as we iterate towards it and produce results and get people excited and using these technologies, they'll evolve.
Yeah. Now, it isn't just the scale of the platform that is scaling at Roblox. Like, it's the scale of the workforce as well. And I want to talk with you, Dan, specifically about how you are managing that scale. Because going from 30 employees to over 1,800 is a huge growth curve, which I'm imagining has its own growing pains. So how are you working to ensure that the people that you bring in, you know, mesh with the Roblox culture that exists now, and also, you know, how are the growing pains playing out that you're trying to innovate around for the future?
Right. And by the way, particularly difficult in COVID, where we have more employees who joined, you know, after we closed our offices than before. And now we're in our offices again. We're starting to come back in. It's not perfect yet, but, you know, we're starting to do this. But we all know that building culture over Zoom is just a lot harder than building culture face to face. You know, part of this goes to almost the same way, in some weird ways, the same way we focus on innovation. We really do have a concept, almost like a hierarchy on how small teams fit into bigger teams, and the kind of responsibility and the autonomy they have. And what I've really seen is, despite the massive growth, new folks are still learning the culture and the tone from existing folks like Anthony, who's been around forever. You know, I've only been here 2.5 years, but now I feel I've been here like forever, just by soaking in the culture of the place. Of course, culture is a big part of what we look for during the interview process. That itself's not perfect. But I think in general, we're much more willing to focus on, are you a fit for Roblox, than do you have exactly the skills we need, right? We're always willing to people, and then we take a long-term view on features. We're willing to take a long-term view on people. They can always learn the skills they need to learn. Yeah. If they're not a fit, if they're not excited about the community and willing to put their community first, if they're not willing to take longer to figure something out and innovate versus just get something out the door, they're probably not going to do really well here. And, you know, the few folks I can think of who haven't, it's generally more around that than just, oh, they just weren't able to bring the skills to the table that we wanted to bring. It tends to be much more that way. And that's something we just keep focused on. At the same time, we're always thinking about, how do we scale better? So we have an entire team we have a unique role, a peer of mine, our chief systems officer, whose job is to really innovate the sorts of tools we bring to bear that allow us to communicate better, that allow us to check in with each other better, allow us to understand how the company's performing and where our strengths and our weaknesses are. That's where all that work around building assessment and learning systems sits, right? So we're always investing in taking a unique approach to make sure we have the glue, kind of minimum bureaucracy, and then bring the tools that can help us glue is kind of the approach we're taking. And through that, reinforce the culture.
It is good that you have somebody else doing that, because that's a whole bunch of extra stuff going on.
A lot of work, yeah. I'm busy enough.
Well, I'm gonna wind my part of the conversation down, because I could continue to ask you guys questions all afternoon, but I think it's important that our contributors who are virtual can actually participate as well. I'm excited from hearing, you know, what you guys are talking about. In our pre-conversations, I never actually got the meat of everything that we were talking about. So this has really enthused me about the innovations and how you guys are planning to incorporate innovation into your teams, as well as dealing with the problems of scale. So right now, we're going to turn to Meredith in the audience, who has a huge bunch of questions that have come in from our virtual participants. By all means,
you.
The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. So our first question is actually for Kieran. And it's, what are your thoughts on Roblox Studios supporting offline use?
Offline news?
Offline use.
That might be better for Anthony, to be honest. Yeah. Let's let the developer guy.
Yeah, good call. Let's let.
So Roblox Studio is currently a connected or online product, and you have to be connected to the internet to use it, to use the full functionality of it. I think we've obviously talked about it. I've even seen builds before many years ago of offline. But I think to get the full experience, we want you connected to the cloud, working with your team. And I think that is something that you have to be connected to the internet with and and I think that is the best experience that we've seen the best results from. So Roblox Studio currently is an online product.
Maybe I can just add to that briefly. we view the way Roblox runs as such a connected back-end system-oriented thing. It's not just what you see on your phone. And so in order to be able to develop to that, you need to be able to access those systems. So right now we're saying, geez, the development experience would be so crippled if you're limited to the local device you're on and you can't access those services and systems that really right now we think it's tightly integrated. And so we're going to probably stick with online being part of that picture.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Next question we have is for Kavita. If you had to choose one monetization strategy to rule them all, would it be advertising or digital content marketplaces, and why?
It's difficult to choose between your children. These are literally two orgs under me. So I think both of them are equally important, because if we just focus on ad side and business side and campaign management, we'll just probably dilute our experience. And the whole purpose we are called economy and not revenue is because we are balancing marketplace and the dynamics and the demand and supply, and not just, I mean, we could make a lot more money tomorrow if we just showed ads everywhere and dilute the experience, but that's not the whole philosophy of economy team. So I think both are equally important. I cannot choose.
Good enough for me. I like it. My next question is for Dan. So my son started playing Roblox around 5 years ago. He was 4 or 5 years old. There was a chat window, and I was pretty nervous about who he was able to talk to. Since then, I've seen chat appear, disappear, or have a number of different limitations. How do you manage child safety on the platform?
Yeah, so safety is pretty much always our top priority. I think since I've been here, at least I think for years going back, like we take safety, we can't have a good community unless it's safe and civil. It just won't work on this platform. Remember, this is immersive, it's 3D, and so on. We have a large team. No one from that team is up here because we can only have 4, but who focus on this every day. Where it is unfortunately an adversarial game, right? Like, in other words, it's not just staying still. People are always trying to abuse the system in new and exotic ways. It's a big investment. So first of all, parental controls to enable that or not are on the platform. But then going beyond that, just what's default, because not every parent can see and know what's going on, making sure that what you're seeing is age appropriate, with a big distinction between under 13 and over 13. We also look at things of how do we mix communities when we place you into games. Strong bias to just putting you in same age category things, right? It's not perfect. People can lie about their age online, of course, and so on. But it's also not just the chat, but who you're chatting with, and how do we control that better? And it's just something with a really large R&D investment where we're building better models, better screening, and watching that very, very carefully. That said, we found without chat, the experience isn't quite as much fun. And in fact, seeing in everyone's household with a Roblox kid, if they're not using our chat, they're probably using some other communication methods with their friends, because these are such social experiences. So we'd rather keep it on platform whenever we can, because at least then we can control it and not lose control, not lose the protections that we can put in place.
Makes sense. I guess this question, I'll start with Kieran, but I think all of you will probably have an answer to this. What is the one thing that people may not realize about the work that your team is doing?
These are very good questions.
Yeah.
Good job. Good job, audience.
Yeah, I think the larger community of researchers who think about faces and avatars and tracking and animation don't necessarily understand the scale of challenges and the scale of creativity on the platform. So from a purely technical point of view, not many people in the research community are actually thinking about the problems that we actually face on the ground. So I guess these are opportunities for us to communicate the kinds of problems we work on. But yeah, that's probably the main thing. So the innovation, a lot of the innovations are coming from internal work. The variety of avatars and the characters and the experiences and the skill set of the developers who are putting together these experiences makes for a very complex R&D problem. and that combined with safety which is another element makes development very unique and different from other places in the industry.
I think that's actually a really interesting point, is that somebody like me comes along and wants to study Roblox, right? I've done that for other virtual worlds in the past, and not quite understanding, not quite recognizing exactly what is involved. Can I really distract, can't it? So how are you guys separating the people like me who want to come in and study Roblox from, keeping us separate from what's actually going on? I think you mentioned that there is a research.
Oh yeah, we have really kicked it off in August. A Roblox research team. Its mission is to better connect us with the academic community and the academic community with Roblox. And a large part we want to do that is because we have all these interesting problems to work at that are different than maybe in some very interesting ways from the traditional problems that academic community has been focused on, right? And it's different from product development, because product development, often you don't have the time to breathe to really kind of distill that and have that collaboration, but it feeds into it. It's also not just pie in the sky stuff, it's how does it directly tie in. So you've heard about some of the problems Karen's working on. We're looking at deep problems in how do we scale this out through systems. We had this dream someday of running a 50,000 person rock concert that can run on your iPhone 8, right? And doing that combination of front and back end. Safety is a big one. How do we better understand intent and what is safe speech and not? Because it doesn't necessarily just come down to vocabulary. We all know the most cutting insults can be said with the most innocent words, right? And how do we start to make the world civil and understand that sort of behavior? So there's a lot of really interesting problems there that kind of tie into some of the stuff Karen was talking about.
What about for developer? What types of things are you working on that people would be surprised to know about?
Yeah, I think we've already talked about the longevity of the product and the contract, and so I think that is a very interesting one from an engineering perspective, because when you're designing for the long view, it is a different style of engineering, and I think that's a really interesting and rewarding feat, because it's not something just to build and then see the reaction. You have to do a little bit of the prep work before and then after, and make sure that your systems are appropriate for the short and long term. And I think this is a different style of thinking that I see everywhere with my peers at Roblox, and I think that is something that is challenging and frustrating at times, because finding that right balance isn't always easy. Sometimes it's it's not obvious, and sometimes we can't even find it and we have to walk away. So but I do think that it is a very rewarding thing, and it's why I think we're all here solving problems.
Kavita, what about in economy?
Economy, I think people wouldn't realize how cross-functional it is because of the formats. We really are just starting to experiment with different formats, which can be classified as billable ads, which are so native, and the boundaries are very, very thin. I think that's an interesting problem. So we have to work with consumer teams across all the client teams. Then we have to work with finance team. Then the ad-facing brands team. So people don't realize how large and cross-functional engineers in economy actually have to read.
Our next question from the audience is for Dan. So there is a lot of emphasis on 3D experiences and virtual worlds. What about real-life experiences that incorporate digital experiences?
Now that is a really good question. I think that's a space where we're still trying to think about where the world may go and what that's going to look like, and what are the devices that are going to enable that well. That said, often, as is typical, our developer community can be ahead of us. I've seen some developers starting to incorporate, it starts as simply as mocking up a place that is in the real world so you can do something you couldn't do otherwise. We've seen school graduations during COVID done on Roblox. But I've also seen some experience where people are trying to plug in things around your current GPS location through an API they build into an experience that changes the way experience works. So being a platform, I think our goal on all of this is to provide the right tech to enable people to do whatever creative, crazy ideas they may have that we would never dream up. And I think we're trying to understand where that may go from how does virtual tie in the physical world. But I bet anything we're going to learn that because our creators are going to find ways to hack their way there. And then we'll quickly say, well, okay, that looked really hard. How do we make that easier for them? So many things at Roblox happen that way. So I think that's an exciting space, and we should all keep an eye on it. I know I am.
We have time for one more question from the audience. So choose wisely.
Okay, I will. I think this one's interesting. So for new grads, junior software engineers, who are maybe looking to move from creating games to, doing traditional like software engineering inside Roblox, do you have any tips for them to make that jump?
I think we should.
Okay.
Head on over there. You step up.
I think by building systems and me and my systems, but by building systems and so if you're building a game and you're working on, I don't know, a maze generator, instead of just laying down a maze, you could get that probably done in some amount of time. You could invest in building that generator, and I think the same skills that to build a generic maze generator or any generic system will be applicable with most software jobs. And I think that attitude and approach to solving problems is almost always going to be worth it in the long term in your career, because it extends your thinking, it twists your brain, and it makes you work a muscle that you don't have to. And I think that's the skill software engineers thrive on.
Maybe I'll just add, I think we have a lot of very successful staff at Roblox who got their start as creators on the platform. And particularly when you say someone who is new in their career, I think my best advice would be just jump in with both feet. Like, you're not talking about someone who maybe has 20 years experience and you kind of bring that with you next job. The world is your oyster when you're starting your career, and things are so easy. And, we love those sorts of folks at Roblox as long as you're committed. Like the people where that is more of a challenge when you really want to do is the creation process. And we are building a platform here. It's certainly creative in the way we do it, but you're not creating the games and or experiences. So, that may not be the best match. But if that's what you want to do, jump with both feet.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I'm excited by what I've heard today. Sadly, I'm not going to jump in with both feet into Roblox because I would be one of those people on the research team getting in the way of you, Kieran, trying to make your avatars. But I think that anybody who is considering coming along to Roblox, I think what we've heard today is that it's a really thriving and an innovative place. It's very thoughtful, the way you guys are dealing with both each of your specific tracks, but also with how you innovate to scale, both with scale within the community and scale within the company itself. And I know you wanted to say one quick thing before we sign off.
Sure, and that's, you heard a lot about how we're operating today. We have a grand vision, and to get that grand vision realized is going to take a lot of people. So we're always hiring. If you found this exciting, please check out our website. Our jobs are posted there. To the student who asked about how to get going in their career, look for our new college grad applications. Generally, I think that opens in the fall, and just go from there. So there's a lot of good work to do here. We'd love to have you join us.
Excellent. So if you are a problem solver, then you know where to go. I want to thank my fantastic guests this evening, Anthony Chowdhury, Kavita Kanekdar, Kieran Bhatt, and Dan Sturman. Thank you. And also thank you very much to our live audience who laughed at the most appropriate bits, who shuffled in your seats to remind us to keep things moving, and to our virtual audience for some fantastic questions. So thank you all very much, and do go to the website. For the rest of us, we're going across the way to have a little bit of a happy hour. Thank you very much for joining. Good job, guys.
Please welcome Andrea Fletcher to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited to kick off the session with you all, but first, I would like to introduce our lovely panelists. From left to right, we have Brooke Rhodes, Pepper Reamer, Daniel Fox, and Zach Ovitz. You'll hear more from them later, and you'll have plenty of time to ask these experts anything, so during the talk, please keep questions in mind and save them for our extended Q&A at the end. And with that, hello developers. My name is Andrea Fletcher. I'm an engineering manager on the Design Systems and Accessibility team here at Roblox, and I am here to talk to you all about UI frameworks and how they can impact your development. So first, the problem that we're trying to solve. Making experiences on Roblox is super fun, really easy to get started, but making complex, resilient UI is surprisingly challenging. Creation, organization, testing is tricky, even with the most experienced developers. With a lot of individual components, it's hard to make things consistent. Bugs pop up if state isn't updated regularly, and making large-scale changes to your UI can feel impossible and overwhelming. And UI frameworks can simplify this greatly. Individual components are made in one place and reused across all surfaces. And the way that UI frameworks are designed makes some common UI bugs just impossible to have. And developing is easier too. You can develop entire UIs without ever pressing play in Studio. We define a UI framework as a package that helps handle the logic and creation of UI. And in this talk, we will focus on two very popular UI frameworks at Roblox, React and Fusion. React is a state-based UI framework. It regenerates UI when a change in state happens, re-rendering, adding, removing items until they're up to date. And Fusion is more logic-based. You connect objects together to describe your UI, and then you plug the pieces together. So here, you can see a coin counter UI in both React and Fusion. The code might look a little different and maybe unlike other Roblox code that you've seen, but they both have the same end result. This is a fairly simple example, but you might notice a couple differences in basic syntax, how you initialize components, how you reference props, and how variables are, or how state is held. So React Lua, you might also know this as Roact, React Luau. React is a transpiled version of the web's React framework, and with a couple extra additions that make it uniquely suited for Roblox development. And if you didn't already know, the Roblox app is written almost entirely in React. So this is what any Lua engineer, including myself at Roblox, works with all day, every day. The Lua-specific documentation is not the most comprehensive, but because this is transpiled from web, there are loads of existing resources on the web for this. Now, Fusion has been in development since 2019 and made its public debut in 2021. The creator of Fusion is our own Daniel Fox, and And like I mentioned earlier, Fusion is logic-based, and one of the major benefits is that it's super lightweight, especially when you compare it to React. And if you find yourself doing lots of tiny micro-interaction animations in your UI, definitely check Fusion out, because it makes this stuff super, super easy. So one of the things that we wanted to leave the audience with after this talk is a sample project made in both frameworks. So you can see this Figma up here made by Daniel, and this is for an inventory UI. Inventory is something that almost every experience has, and it's also something that's really hard to build. It's notoriously bug-ridden, it's not that fun, and it's really complex to develop. So we have demo projects written in both, and we'll show off some of the differences and how these were both written and developed in the next slides. Here is a quick video of the demo built by Pepper in React Lua. Again, we have QR codes and short links, so feel free to open these up, look at the code on your own devices, check it out later, and if you have any questions, save them for the end, because you'll be able to ask people who've authored these anything on your mind. So what I want to highlight here is the usage of plugins to improve engineering efficiency. This is all outside of a play session, and Pepper's able to test different color combos and different behaviors in scripted UI by using HorseCat. I work in React Lua all day, and I press play maybe once or twice a week to test very specific things. And here is the same demo project built by Fusion and Daniel. So Daniel went a little above and beyond in adding animations to show off the benefits of the framework. So you can see that the numbers wiggle a little bit when you hover over them, and the button gradients shift and it makes the UI feel really alive. And this would take maybe a lot of effort in normal Roblox UI development, but it's so easy with Fusion. So now, we'll answer the question that everyone's been asking. Which of these frameworks are better? And our answer is they are both fantastic. Sorry to disappoint. But there are, of course, pros and cons to each. React has a lot of documentation due to it being transpiled from an incredibly popular web framework. But it might have a higher learning curve, and it's not necessarily performant by default. Fusion is lightweight, more familiar with people who have experience building Roblox UI, and it makes animating incredibly easy, but it tends to be a little more verbose. And UI frameworks are not for everyone, and definitely not for every project. They will cause you fewer bugs, and they will improve your developer efficiency and keep things more organized, but familiarity takes a while to develop, and things might move a little slower at first, and you'll probably have a smaller hiring pool within Roblox developers. So that we have a guide to how to get started with UI frameworks. And because we know that it can be really daunting, and we know that people try it out and drop off because it's really intimidating. So this is what we've come up with as a way to get started, get familiar with developing with UI frameworks. So first, check out tutorials. We have some new staff articles and community articles that you can find on the dev forum, and maybe you even check out the source code for our demo project. Next, and arguably at the same time, please check out plugins. Plugins are the biggest benefit or the biggest value add when you're using UI frameworks. It can save you a ton of time, and it just makes the organization of your code so much better. And once you've played around with the frameworks a bit, dive into a project. Everyone learns and develops differently, but we found that keeping your expectations realistic, picking off an achievable chunk, an achievable part of a project, can really help you push through any obstacles. And speaking of pushing through obstacles, there is an amazing community out there of open source developers and experts in the space, all of these people included, that are very active in the open source Discord server. So they will help unblock you with any questions. It's a really great community. I highly recommend joining and getting to know these people. And speaking of that, there is a booth downstairs, All Things Luau, where we will all be hanging out after lunch. So if you want to come by, ask us questions, learn more about open source in general, please stop by. We'd love to talk to you. Now, on to the good stuff. I am going to kick off Q&A with our first question. Panelists, I would love each of you to introduce yourselves and then tell us a way that UI frameworks have impacted you in your projects. We will start off with Pepper.
Yeah, so I am Pepper, or Kampf Karen. You may remember me from the forums, from Celine, Data Store 2, and Horsecat, but my primary project right now is My Movie. It is a game where you make 2D animations. There can be up to more than like 30 images and avatars from the marketplace on screen at a time that I don't control, so it needs to be very performant, and React makes that completely fine. As the only engineer working on My Movie, I have found that React helps greatly increase my velocity, both in terms of its ability to help me release massive updates very quickly, but also in its ability to drastically minimize the amount of issues that come from it. So despite having 50,000 lines of UI code, there's only really a couple of noticeable bugs, and the performance is really good. This is a big deal for me because I'm often only working on My Movie for a couple hours a day, and yet I'm still able to release pretty large updates on a frequent basis. My workflow is like the one you saw before of the shop. I am basically never clicking play until the update is finished. Greatly increases my speed to release stuff. I'm building the whole UI out in code, which in your head might seem a lot slower than using the UI editor or changing properties, but the big benefit is that it is completely interactive. So instead of just seeing how my UI will look like, I can see how my UI will feel like and actually use like. And I can avoid having to wait for my place to load and all that. I see it instantly.
Amazing answer. Okay, next up, switching over to Fusion, we'll hear from Zach about how it's impacted his development of Lua Learning.
Hi RDC, I'm Zach, although you probably know me as Boat Bomber. I've been on Roblox since 2011, and for the past 6.5 years now, I've been working on Lua Learning, which is a UI-based educational experience. And thank you. So as you can imagine, I was 15 when I started, and the code base has seen a lot of change. Initially, it was imperative, which meant that I was manually creating the UI instances in Studio, and then at runtime, kind of like cloning them in my scripts and putting them around, trying to attach behavior to it. It was very tedious, disorganized, and it made any kind of update take so long to build. And forget about accessibility. I mean, it was very not dynamic. Barely supported anything that wasn't a 16:9 screen, let alone dynamic text sizes. So when Dan showed me what he was on back then, he was like, got this new declarative UI framework, and I immediately volunteered to be the guinea pig so that instead of just developing it in like small little test cases, let's try it with a real production use case. Let's rebuild Lua Learning from scratch in Fusion. Best decision I ever made. It is now super well organized. Everything is animated. There is now like text size and motion sickness and color blindness accessibility. And adding new pages, new sections now takes a matter of minutes when it used to be weeks, because we spent some time building up our component library. So when we have some new UI that we want to build, we just take these pieces and put them together, and we get to focus more on the user experience, try out different layouts. And as you can see there, Lua Learning, I got it to run at 1,800 frames per second on my mid-range gaming PC, which is just ridiculous. Fusion is super performant. And yeah, I mean, you'll hear more about it as we talk through the questions, but I am all in on Fusion.
Okay, it's a very compelling argument for Fusion. And now we'll hear from Brooke about React and Clip It.
Yeah, hi, I'm Brooke. I lead UI in an experience called Clip It. It's very similar to Pepper's game, My Movie, where it's a full UGC platform where players can publish clips to a global For You page in loads of different languages with dozens of different animating components. Really want to focus on here is that we're trying to build a very native feeling mobile app, and React makes that really easy, or UI frameworks in general make that really easy, because we can create native interactions once and then use them everywhere. A good example of that is touch interactions, things like buttons, swipes, dragging, resizing, pinching to zoom, swiping on the feed. These are all things that we implement in one place, and then we can reuse infinitely everywhere, because React makes it very easy to compose behaviors and use them everywhere. Super quick, we're a 9-person team now, I think. Ship really fast, very few bugs, and like everybody else, we resonate with the same things. The workflow, it all happens in a Storybook plugin. We press play very few times. Makes it very quick to move.
Awesome. So I'm going to pass it off to Daniel, but first, right after this, we're going to open it up for Q&A. There's 2 microphones on the side, so if you want to go ahead and get up and line up, get your questions ready, we will kick it off to y'all right after this. Okay, Daniel, you're up.
All right, so hello everyone, I'm Dan, and I created Fusion, as well as a bunch of other things you might know me for, like plugins, Volumica, and the vanilla icon set. I've been getting around the place. But specifically, I wanted a better framework for all of my plugins to be built on, and that's what motivated me to make Fusion a long, long time ago. Almost 5 years ago now, which is insane. So my latest suite of plugins has a design system called Sensation, which has a bunch of components in, lots of small micro interactions, lots of tiny animations, some of the most complex ones I've ever shipped. And so I really need direct control over the low-level performance of every single part of my UI, which Fusion is explicitly designed to give me. I'm explicitly designing everything to be thin, so I know exactly what's happening on the CPU. And also, Fusion, importantly, has one true workflow. So if you have an animation, you can pipe it right back into computations to do things like snapping to the pixel grid or adding extra flair with messages and string concatenation. There are a whole bunch of things that I do with animations more than just animating properties. And with that, it's incredibly easy to maintain dozens of micro-interactions. As a one-man team, I do not have any other designers or any other employed programmers. I am just working on my own. And yet, I'm still shipping plugins like Relight and Reclass, and I'm having fun doing it. And so I really hope that with Fusion, every single person in this room can have a workflow just like that.
Awesome. Thank you, panelists. So it seems like we have some people ready with questions. Would you mind introducing yourself and asking your question?
Hi, I'm Xenosynthesis, former Roblox Accelerator intern, current Roblox teacher. I have a question for Daniel and Zach. As a fellow educator, a lot of my students are visual learners who don't like to type. They kind of grew up without keyboards. Are there any plans for a Fusion or even is there a plan for a code visualizer such as Blockly, Scratch, or even Unreal Engine's graph node editor for Fusion?
All right, should I take this one?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so I've thought about this a fair amount, actually. Visual editing is one of the biggest blocks between UI designers and UI developers at the moment. Like, one of the top feedback items I keep on hearing is that I don't want to have to look at code in order to build my UIs. I want to be able to have something more intuitive and visual, like Roblox's UI editor. This has definitely been on my mind. And so I would love to have like more node-based UI editing, much more visual UI editing, maybe even something conducive to touch. But at the moment, there's nothing directly on the roadmap, but it's been going through my brain like there's no tomorrow. So, yeah.
I also want to take this as an opportunity to shout out Codify, I'm not exactly sure how it's pronounced, but it's a plugin that you can build your UI the way you're used to using the UI editor in Roblox Studio, select those instances, and then it can convert that into code, and it supports both React and Fusion and a couple others. So if you want to maintain your original workflow, this can help bridge that gap and still get you the benefits of having declarative code at the end of the day.
Thank you.
And something I'll plug really quick, it's not out yet, but it's in beta. We're working on style sheets, which are kind of Lua's version of CSS. So it kind of breaks out the styling part from the logic part. We've been using it internally, and what's really nice about that is at a minimum you can do the styling without code. Once you get into interactions, you need code somewhere, but that can help at least with the styling aspect. So 2025, very excited for it.
Hi, my name is Noah. I'm with Sawhorse. I'm formerly a product designer before I was a user, and I use Figma like pretty much all day, every day. You know, I sensed a lot of you guys are using those same tools. Are there any plans for anyone to make some kind of like plugin for Figma or some way to like export, you know, code or snippets from Figma into those?
Someone is working on that. I don't know if they're in this. Aiden, are you in this room?
I'm looking at them right now.
Aiden is in this room.
Nice.
They're working on exactly that. I don't know too much, but I do know that there is stuff for Figma to Roblox, and they're the one working on that.
Thank you, and thank you. So.
One other thing is that I believe EgoMoose has a system for porting Photoshop to Roblox, so like PSD files as well.
So hi, I'm Evan. I'm a co-owner of TTD3. We're currently going through like a whole rewrite of our code, and we want to start actually using like a UI framework. We didn't want to use React because it was a little bit too bloated, and we wanted to start using Fusion, but it was in beta. Do you think with the recent update that has come out, I'm pretty sure, 3.0, right?
Yeah.
Would it be okay to use in prod like right now for a big game that's already established?
Here's the thing. So I started making Fusion like a long time ago, and immediately after 0.1, people were already using it in production, even though I told them not to do that. So basically, it's already been battle tested in production against my wishes. But now with 0.3, the official line is that every single version of Fusion, we will test it as much as we can. It's shipping right now in my own plugins. It's shipping in Lua Learning. It's shipping in a million other places from a bunch of enthusiasts in the community. And so you should feel good about using Fusion in production. The only reason it's not 1.0 yet is because the design of the library, the design of the APIs is still subject to change. We want to give ourselves some room to make breaking changes if we find some fundamental thing isn't working quite the way we want it to expand in future. But right now, in terms of bugs, Fusion is absolutely doing fantastic. We make sure to test it really rigorously before we push anything out. So go ahead, use it in production. Just make sure you're willing to accept that maybe next version we might introduce a new API and maybe you might have to port to it.
All right, thank you so much.
Take some questions from that side now, please.
All right, Bob, you're up.
Yes, my name is WebGL3D. I'm primarily a web developer, very familiar with React.
I'm curious if React is transpiled from JavaScript, how does it handle more advanced events? I can see things like mouse over and mouse leave, but how does it handle things like drag and drop events?
You want to take this one, Brooke?
Yeah. So React is translated from React.js, but it doesn't. When you say how does it handle drag and drop events, it doesn't use web events. Are you familiar with how React works at all?
No.
Okay. So when you create instances with React or any of these libraries, you connect or you hook into the events that those instances already have. So for something like drag and drop, that's something you would implement yourself. Is that anything to add to that?
Yeah.
Got it. Segmented drag and drop events then would not be necessarily available in the Lua version of React. Yeah, so I think the hang up here is that React is not itself necessarily web. When we say transpiled from JavaScript, we mean that the code itself is brought over to Lua, but not necessarily like any web-specific interactions. That is kind of a separate thing. React is even used for like native apps and stuff, but in the Roblox sense, you would have to implement that stuff yourself in anything.
Well, there's the new UI drag detectors that's native to the engine now, so that can be used with React to get that without having to do it all yourself.
Got it, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, question from the left.
Yep, so hi, I am Bonnabelle. I'm a software engineer, and I also use React.js every day in my day-to-day job. I was just wondering, I haven't used Fusion yet, or really React on Roblox. What is your process for testing right now? Is there any sort of automated unit testing we have available for React Fusion?
I unit test my stuff. I wouldn't know if I'd call it a solution. It's kind of hard because you can't so easily in anything test like mouse click because we don't have access to emulating specific inputs. But there are some magic tricks with React that I've found to be able to trigger things like activated and that kind of stuff. And once you get there, the workflow is actually quite nice. Brooke, who published the React Lua, has also published a transpile of Jest 3. I love it. You can run that in Studio with a bit of elbow grease. And I would say that it is passing right now in terms of can you unit test React? Yes, it's not super fun yet, but you can.
Are there any examples of those in the documentation that you're sharing today?
I mean, I can add real quick. The testing story in general in Roblox is a little bit interesting, as I'm sure lots of people in this room know. We have Jest now. These libraries are also published by Roblox now on the official Roblox GitHub, but they're distributed on Wally as RBXM files in various places. Jest is currently the recommended way to run tests in Roblox, and testing React specifically is what is the hang-up. We have React Testing Library, which is a translated version of Web's testing library for React. It has some blockers and some issues, but it sort of mostly works. We use it for a couple bits on Clipit. We test, mainly the things we test on Clipit is logic that's independent of rendering in React. Generally, I don't typically test the actual visual look of the components. And then, so could you repeat your last question?
I was just wondering if you had examples in the documentation. That's it.
I'll put it up when I get home. I'll make you. I'll make you some.
There you go. There you go.
That's a great request because testing it's hard to know what good testing is.
Yeah.
And I think Nick and Tian mentioned it in the Creator All Hands yesterday, but there's a couple blockers to really being able to leverage the libraries that we've made source available on Roblox for y'all to be able to use them properly. And we're working on a lot of things that are blocking that. So hopefully we'll be in a much better spot to make these easy to use next year. I think headless execution in the cloud is the main thing that's blocking it because it's just hard to give access to something like virtual input, which DOM testing library and React testing library rely really heavily on. So we are working on it, I guarantee it.
But also to add to the React testing story, I'm going to be releasing React DevTools in a few weeks, which will allow you to inspect the React rendering. Thank you. There you go. It'll allow you to inspect the React rendering tree, profile your React components. It tells you why components were rendered. Lots of cool stuff, hopefully releasing in the next roughly a month. We'll see. A lot of work to get it working.
So excited for that.
Yes.
Hi, I am Thought Spinner. Used to go by Rocky. I'm a bit of a React fanboy, so this is a question for Dan. So Fusion has been around for a good number of years now, and it's often billed as a great UI library for Roblox because it's designed specifically for the engine and can therefore take advantage of engine-specific quirks to make it fast. However, to this day, almost every benchmark ran against it shows that it performs 2 times slower than React, or close to it. And it's about on par with legacy React in terms of performance. Considering this and a number of other factors working against it compared to React, such as the stability API and just sheer number of maintainers, my question is a bit of a two-parter. What is the actual practical justification for using Fusion over React today? And do you believe Fusion ever can or will match or beat out React in terms of performance?
All right, so firstly, wow. And secondly,
I spent my entire morning writing that question.
Yeah, I can tell. Like, this is something, I've seen it come up time and time again in the open source Discord, which, by the way, everyone in here, like, the open source Discord is amazing. There are so many cool people there, more than could ever fit on a stage like this, so you should be there. But anyway, I digress. So, Fusion, right now we're focused on correctness over performance. We want to get it right before we get it fast. And so 0.3 in particular, the latest update, was all about reworking the foundations of Fusion to support more structured memory management and to make sure that code was running with more correct dependency tracking. And as a result of that, Fusion has gotten slower. And we are not oblivious to that. I know that it's frustrating because people do want to, like, they want to make 1,000 frames that are animating with springs all on the screen at once, and it's like confetti everywhere, and that's fantastic, and I love that. But also, we need some time to get there. And we are going to be working on this much more as a priority now. With the forthcoming Fusion updates, we are now starting to really put spit, shine, and polish on everything. But something else I want to mention as well is when it comes to those benchmarks, they are often like stress tests that are testing things that you really shouldn't be doing in production. Like if you have like 1,000 frames in a square with like some rainbow pearl and noise, just use an editable image, right? Like, but they're useful for measuring the hot paths of Fusion, the most critical parts of the code, and that's really important for us as maintainers. But for you, if you are using UI frameworks in your projects, you will probably not be writing code in the same way. So while they're useful for us as maintainers, I would also encourage you to try and benchmark your own code and to try things out in your own style to see what your style of code performs like. So that's my answer to those questions.
I will also say very quickly, as also a big React fan, I have to confess that Fusion is it's easier to write performant code with Fusion. React can be very, very, very performant, but it's also, unfortunately, a little easy to write very naive code that does a lot of stuff like in a render thing, and it doesn't have like memos or whatever, and then you end up losing a bunch of performance, and without dev tools, it can be hard to figure out where that's even coming from. So
yeah,
I'm surprised to hear about the benchmarks.
I wanted to point out that pretty much the same thing, where it's about the best practices, and these benchmarks do not follow them, kind of that intentionally. But in the real world use cases, Lua Learning is a large app full of UI, things animating. I do have confetti and fireworks. Even when Fusion confetti and fireworks are all going off, it's still running at over 1,000 frames per second with animations. I think you'll find that in practice, in real use cases with real code that's not, kind of contrived Sierpinski triangle benchmarks, Fusion will often outperform React.
Sweet, thanks.
Okay, we'll take a question from the left, and we'll get back to y'all.
Yeah, I'm actually glad that that question was asked because I had a lot of the same questions. So yeah, good answer. I guess this is more of a question for the Roblox side. I know that Noah had asked about porting Figma to Roblox. That would be really powerful. Kind of piggybacking off of that, is there a way to get vector files like SVG into Roblox? Because, you know, I'm pretty sure people have had it where they try and resize, you know, like a box, right, from a photo editor, and then becomes like pixelated. So I really wonder if we'll have like SVG and make everything a lot easier.
I can say confidently that every time we've brought up SVG support, we've been met with a resounding no. For reasons that I don't know. But that doesn't mean they're not important, and that doesn't mean it's something that we're not like looking into. In fact, we had this amazing presentation by one of the designers on my team this week about trying to do the same thing with our icons. And one of the things, like I mentioned, that Roblox developers, like employees working on the app, we are building stuff in Lua and using plugins to develop, and we have designers that work in Figma. So we actually run into a lot of the same problems as you all, even though we have, you know, a couple things like virtual input. So I can at least say, don't worry, we have the same things, and we are fighting for it internally, and it might end up being solved in a different way than you might think. Yeah.
Yeah, this is on my roadmap. I have a working plan for how to render vectors in Roblox. Not going to talk about too much here, but like keep an eye out the next few months. It's like near the top of my to-do list because we have the same problem in Clip It. We want really crisp icons and images, and I have a good plan for how to make that work performantly. So
cool.
Yeah.
Sounds exciting. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, and also I'll just quickly add on to that. I think I actually am a little bit more privy to the reasons why SVG isn't a thing. SVG files can contain things like JavaScript, and they can contain really complicated blend modes. And so implementing SVG support is a little bit more than just, you know, oh, we'll take this library and we'll put it here. It's like we'd have to redo a lot of rendering stuff in order to support that. But also on top of that, like definitely watch out for what Brooke is doing, because I mean, like I don't know how you're not employed by Roblox yet, because you seem to be like powering the entire open source ecosystem at this point. It's amazing. So I would definitely, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got a couple minutes left, so I want to try to get through all these questions. You are up.
Hey everyone, I'll keep my question quick. I actually work at Blocks, but I was interested in UI. Could you talk a little bit about how both React and Fusion help with collaborative workflows? So multiple people with different roles. So like a designer working with an engineer, and how you work together with them.
I can at least talk about it from the Roblox perspective. Of course, we use Git, and my team works on the UI component library, and we've done a lot of cool things to help work with designers because we're a really small engineering team with a lot of designers. We have used the Open Cloud Place publishing thing to actually publish a version of Storybook that's embedded so that our designers can go and verify that our stuff works well and make sure that all of the props are defined as controls, and that has been a really cool value add that we were like, oh, this is going to be really hard, and it turns out it was really easy. And in general, just giving the ability for designers to try it out without having to download Studio has been a really big value add for us, because I think that can be a little daunting for our designers. Anyone want to add?
I mean, yeah, for us, we're a pretty small engineering team. We don't have any dedicated designers on our team, but we move quickly, constantly pushing new updates, meeting milestones. The way we do that is with components and just kit bashing. It's kind of like Lego. Like once you have enough small little building bricks, you kind of get to the point where you don't even have to think about the primitives like frames, because you have enough abstraction that you could just throw stuff at it and it looked good like every time. So.
And also I'll jump in on that as well. If you have a system using design tokens, or if you have to do like font size conversions from Figma, then it's very easy in code to write usable functions that hide all of that. And then when it comes to actually templating out your UI, you can literally drop in references to variables that come from like your centralized design system. And so if you're working on a team, you can have the people in charge of the design system putting out generic reusable code that you can then plug right into the UI right where you're writing it. And so that's like the killer application for like UI frameworks in a collaborative setting.
Cool, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, maybe second to last question. Go with you on the left.
Hello, I am Liz Zinnemann. I do UI for Phantom Forces, and I traditionally work in the 16:9 aspect ratio. And so the challenge for me is, how do I scale to mobile screens or iPad screens or whatever dimensions? And this is more of an open design question for any of you guys, and in any framework, or how you guys would approach this problem while capturing, say, a lot of advanced stats for weapons, like graphs, or like just having a list of items that people want to look at.
So is this asking about how you would write that, or are you asking more about just like general design and layout?
Let's start with the layout. I think that's a big challenge, just visualizing how things should move. So what I can do is I cheat with borders and just keep it as a 16:9 ratio regardless of what the screen size is. And I want to see if you guys have any better ideas to that.
So one of the things that I did focus on when rewriting Lua Learning was it didn't look great on a lot of screens, and now it can adapt where when testing, right, you're not hitting play, you're just using a plugin. So you can then just wiggle your screen size around and see how your app responds to that. And as you have your declarative layout, you kind of just follow the general rules of design of, like, you know, breaking the screen into thirds and making sure that the relevant information is most prominent. So in Figma or whatever you use to design, use the top 3 aspect ratios that your game sees. Your analytics can help you spot what you need to be supporting. And then from there, create those designs, and then you can have your app respond to that really easily when you declaratively define how this should lay out.
I forgot entirely until you brought it up that if you're doing play solo, you can't change the device emulator thing on the fly, can you? You can in HorseCat. I do that all the time. I completely forgot that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and also to add on to that as well, in Lua Learning, something key that me and Zach both did is that all of the sizes and positions of stuff are defined in our own custom units that are based directly on factors like screen size and which can be adjusted by users in settings. And so it's essentially like the text scaling that Roblox has natively now, except for everything. And this is something that's really, really like obnoxiously difficult to do without a UI framework. But whether it's React, whether it's Fusion, the moment you have a structure within which you can start like integrating code into your UI, it's really easy to define your own unit system that's based on the screen size or based on whatever other like layout heuristics you have. And you can just use it for everything. And you can just like say, well, if the screen size is 200 units wide, then this will have the split layout, or it will just have like the stacked layout below that. And it all just adapts, and you can make it configurable for your users so they can find like the density that works for them. So really, like, that was like the single best thing we did for accessibility.
Honestly, I got so used to having that, I forgot that that's not a normal thing. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, because I know some people try to do it with like UI scale and like the screen GUI, but that breaks everything. So like, yeah, just use frameworks.
Please check out the new Flex API. It makes stuff like getting things to wrap when you're on too small a screen so easy. It has saved us like so many lines of code in rewriting our components.
Sounds good. Yeah,
thank you for your question. I think that's all the time we have. All right. Thank you all for coming.
All right. I got that wax. Who wants some hands up right now? We got that. Turn it up loud. I know you're I got that wax. Who wants some hands up right now? We got that. Turn it up loud. I know you're wondering how. I got that wax.
Please welcome Gurim Sinha to the stage.
Hi. Hello, hello. How's everyone doing? Yeah? Last session. Yes, everyone with me? Yes? Sure? Yes. Everyone ready for the Innovation Awards? Me too, me too. Okay, we chatted about social a bunch yesterday. I'm really excited to go a little bit more in detail today, and we will have a Q&A at the end. We talked a lot about how Roblox is fundamentally social. Roblox is really reimagining the way people come together. We are on a mission to connect 1 billion people. If you think about it, given everyone in the world is social, you want to talk to people you know, you want to hang out with them, you play games, you go to concerts, maybe you go to innovation awards, but you want to talk to people and you want to express yourself. And that is so powerful and that is so comforting to everyone. And Dave talks a lot about it, that in this world, helping people come together and hang out could actually be such a positive force, where so many people are lonely, maybe they need someone to talk to, maybe they need a little fun, maybe they need to play a game, maybe they just need to go dress to impress, because that's their outlet, right? Someone needs that. And I think that's so, so, so powerful to bring people together. We've done this a little bit. Why is social so important? It really drives engagement and monetization. I'll go a little bit in detail today in how this really works. So if you think about it, everyone is coming to Roblox to spend time with each other. I think we are the biggest single multiplayer platform. We are not a single player platform. We are not for someone to hang out alone. There's very few things you can do on Roblox alone. You are always with people. You are coming to Roblox to play with others, and when you find others, you play more, you discover more, you spend more. So really the number one thing is friends. Are you with people you care about? It could be your real life friends. It could be someone you found on your community. They like the same game, they like the same outfits, they like the same places to go to, music, whatever it might be. You want to find at least a few people who you connect with. When that happens, in the first day or first 7 days of signing up on Roblox, they retain a lot more. They're way more likely to come back in week 2, week 3, week 4, and so on. The second piece of this is, oh, I did find a friend, now what? Maybe you chat a little, maybe you are new somewhere, going to a new restaurant, what item do you like here, right? Or maybe going to Disneyland with your friends, or going to a concert and kind of talking about what you like. You get so much more comfort and you get acquainted to things when you do it with friends early on. Now you're ready to go to the party. We talked a lot about parties yesterday, but you're ready to play, you're ready to go to the party, you're ready to go to that concert, to that movie. You need to win it, right? And you need to make sure you end up at the same movie hall, not at different movie halls when you're trying to watch a movie together. That'll be kind of awkward. So we want to make sure you can get together and you can join the same server, the same experience every single time. And all that leads to more games, more time spent on Roblox together, more playtime, you discover something new, whatnot. The second part of this flywheel is capturing content. You are in there, you want to take that photo, right? Again, you could do that in the experiences you are in. You could do that outside the movie theater you went to or the concert you went to. I don't know if there's anyone here who goes to a concert or a cool game or something and does not take a photo. Is there anyone who does not take a photo of a cool spot they go to? I want to talk to you after. How do you not take a photo? Maybe you want a video. But almost everyone, minus maybe 1 or 2 or 3 people, want to take a photo or capture that moment. And they share it, and then someone else sees it, and they're like, oh, I want to go there. I want to go to that cool beach. I want to go to that cool concert. People do things when they discover it through their network. And then they want to share even more. And again, all this leads to people spending more time on Roblox, discovering new content, spending more money. And when you're designing your experiences, as you think about how you get new people, think about how you can help them join with friends, how you can make it really easy for them to invite friends in, how you can make it really easy for them to capture. And a lot of this will actually drive a lot more users into your experience, people spending more time, and eventually these experiences monetizing better. So let's figure out how we do this together. There are 3 big pieces that we want to talk about today. Party, we talked about it yesterday. We will go a little bit more in the detail here. Voice and text chat, a very big part of people having fun when they're together and sharing. I would love to invite Dima on stage to walk us through these things.
Thanks, Garima. And thank you all for being here today, last session of the RDC. So we believe that party is going to be a really important way users join your experiences. When users play together with their friends, they tend to play almost twice as long as compared to without their friends. And after such co-play sessions, they tend to return more frequently to Roblox. You've heard about parties yesterday from Dave and Garima. It's a new seamless way for users to group up and join your experiences together. Users will be connected via text and voice wherever they are on Roblox. They can be on home screen in the same or different experiences. And with guaranteed matchmaking, every party member can make it on the same game server instance. Party will be released by the end of this year. And soon after Party launch, we'll be releasing Party API. With Party API, you will be able to fetch party membership data and subscribe to party membership events. Our idea with Party API is to let you engage party members as a group in your experience and make it more fun, memorable, and streamlined for them. We had a few use cases in mind when designing the API. Let's take a look at a few of them. In a team-based experience, you can consider putting party members onto the same team. In experience that utilizes lobbies and different places, party members can be kept together and be moved together to the next destination. And you can also consider some visual affordance if party members got split up so that they can rejoin to each other. You can make experience more memorable to the whole party if you provide some special items or special power-ups to everyone in the party. In this code snippet of a Party API, if one of the party members has a VIP status, it's shared to everyone in the party. The good news, Party API is really simple. There is a party identifier property on each player instance, and using that and new social service function, you'll be able to retrieve party metadata. In this example, we iterate through user IDs of each party member in the universe. You might be wondering what happens with party voice when it's in voice-enabled experience. Users will have an option to switch between party voice and experience voice. As a platform, we will take care of voice routing, and there is no net new work for developers. Really excited for this launch and would absolutely love all of your feedback on upcoming release on Party and Party API. This brings us to voice and text, primary means of communication and connection in your experiences. Voice daily active usage has grown rapidly on the platform. And this is in a big part due to adoption by our community, by all of you folks. Almost 70% of our top 100 experiences are now voice-enabled. And we know that voice engagement leads to more playtime and more spending in experiences. This past year, we were really focused on growing voice and invested alongside 4 pillars: expanding access to voice globally, improving voice performance, making sure that users are safe when using voice, and streamlining some of the user voice controls. Today, voice is launched in over 32 countries. Many launched just this year, markets like France, Germany, and Japan. Recent improvements to voice resulted in the reduction of total frame time at P95 by 10% with experiences with large number of voice users. P95 simply means that some of the slowest frames got faster and user perceived jitter and lag got reduced. Many of you, or some of you, reported this problem to us. That's the performance of experience chat main that you would see. So this is exactly addressing this problem. and we have concrete plans to improve it further. And this year, we launched a third version of our real-time safety system. The idea behind the system is that it takes care of civility in your experiences so that you can focus on all the rest. It's a machine-learned system that provides a real-time feedback to our users when it detects violation. With the release of this system, we see improved civility on a platform and more playtime in your experiences. And this year, we'll be simplifying voice controls. Mic and camera controls will be moving to the top of the screen, and we'll be removing overhead controls. And second, when voice-enabled users will be joining voice-enabled experiences, they'll be able to use voice right away without additional user-level settings. In addition to all the work we've been doing as a platform, we know many of you are passionate to get to innovate in the voice space and have control over voice. So earlier this year, we released Audio API. This API gives you more control over sound and voice than ever before. Today, Audio API is out of beta, it's fully launched, and it's ready to be integrated by you. Over just a short period of time since release, we saw varied applications of Audio API. So for example, on Tap allows users to customize their voice settings and preferences. Neighbors allows users to change and modify voices in their experience. And voice control uses voice as one of the key gameplay mechanics. It's one of the game inputs alongside traditional inputs like mouse and keyboard. Audio API allows for complex use cases, but the spirit of it is simple. We treat voice just like any other sound, and we model game instances as close as possible to the real world. On the screen, you see default voice setup, something that you get out of the box with new Audio API. Now you tweak it slightly. For example, if push-to-talk is something you're looking after, it's really simple to implement. You can just modify muted property on one of the audio device inputs. You can take a step further and remove the default implementation altogether. So say you have a team-based experience and you want to implement team voice so that team members can always hear each other. In this case, you can remove some of the 3D audio instances and just use audio device inputs and audio device outputs directly. It feels like we are early in the voice space, and I'm really looking forward to where we're going to be at the next year's RDC. And let me touch briefly on text. Majority of our top experiences already integrate with text chat service. Text chat service is a secure and configurable option to implement text in your experiences. We keep investing into making it better. Just this year, we released an automatic translation across 16 languages. And we know there are still some gaps that need to be addressed. We're working on them right now. Once we do, our goal would be to eventually deprecate all the legacy options and unify on text chat service as a single offering. With that, I'll pass it back to Garima to talk more about content and sharing.
Okay. I know this is a really exciting piece for a lot of you. You are really hoping to integrate. So we'll get into the details of the new API as well. Quick reminder, we chatted about this yesterday. We launched Capture's API earlier this year, and in a very short period of time, over 361 million screenshots have been taken. I was actually talking to someone on the team last night. Can someone guess how many experiences have people taken these screenshots in? One. You're so far off. You're so far off.
3? Okay, what is it?
It's more than 200,000 experiences. Oh, you are far off in the other direction. Next year, we'll get there. But the point is, it's a very early feature. We are just getting started in this space, and you can already see how much people want to use this and how excited they get when they are in all these experiences you build. The only way people can take these screenshots are if they're in an experience, right? So they are in there, they're having fun, and they really want to share it. A lot of these hundreds of thousands of experiences I talked about have not yet integrated into the Captures API. This is happening at the platform level. It tells you how big the opportunity is. If you decide to integrate and trigger those screenshots at the right time, they'll be so much more exciting for people. They might go viral. We'll talk about it in a bit. This is another example that I really like, Livetopia. It's a game where people can really just dream up the life they want, whatever they want, right? And it triggers a capture, and it makes it really easy for them to actually share it off platform. Again, driving a lot of awareness for people who are not yet using this experience and bringing them into the experience. So it's actually a really good way for you to get awareness of your experience outside of Roblox, have them share out, they can come back, link into the same experience every time. So what's next? I think you all know. Can I do a memory check? Yeah. I love this game, as you already know. But yes, we are working really hard at bringing video capture on the platform. I know a lot of people here are very, very, very excited about this. The thing I want to go a little bit more in the details today is actually Captures API and how you can use that for video integration. So really the biggest concept we often talk about is the notion of highlights, the notion of roller coaster moments in your experience, the moments that are best in your experiences, because you know when to trigger it. As a user, I might not have the best idea every time. Some people are amazing at that, but some people don't. They need to be reminded. So it's a great way for you all to actually trigger video capture at the right time. So a lot of the video API has been designed with that in mind. You can actually trigger when to unlock camera mode. You can record the video in the background, and you trigger it at the right time, and you can ask a user to post it or save it or whatever you want to do with it. Or you can even do it on the consumption side. You could actually have people post that in your experiences and have a feed out of it. So there is a lot you can do. We are trying to design it in a way that it's minimal in the beginning. We want to see how you all use it, get your feedback, and then we'll go from there, and we'll add more features into it. So that's Video API. There are people from the video team in the audience if you all have any questions about that. So now I would love to call a panel up on stage, and we'll talk about all of this. Jima, come back on. Hi. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this with us.
Did you all survive RDC last 2 days? I hope you had a lot of fun.
We've had a lot of fun. Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, lots of.
I'm so tired.
Oh yeah, it's been awesome.
Let's do a quick round of intro, and then maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, you can tell us how excited and how tired you are.
Okay. Yeah. I'm Brian, or people know me as Fouled Anchors. I'm one of the co-founders of OnTap, and I've been on the platform since 2012, created since 2014. And on the tiredness level, I'm like at a good 6. Yeah.
An excitement level?
Excitement level, like 50,000.
Nice.
Hi, I'm Theron. You might know me as Wim, or AwesomeX for Life. I am a co-founder of OnTap, and I handle all the programming end. On a tired level, I'm probably at 10, and excitement, I'm at 60,000. So.
Not cool. I know, I'm just kidding. It's cool.
Hi, I'm Sam, otherwise known as Boogle. I work on Neighbors. I do most of the programming on Neighbors. But in terms of my tiredness, 50,000 probably. But I'm very excited to, probably 500, I don't know.
Just 500 or 500,000?
No, just 500. I'm a reasonable kind of guy.
Hi, I'm Nicholas. I'm a video creator. I started off on TikTok and now I do YouTube, Instagram, and Snapchat as well. And yeah, I've been on Roblox for 4 years, but I only started posting about it 2 years ago, and it's brought me here, and I love it. Yeah, and I'm very tired. I'd say a 10, but also excitement is 90,000. Let's go with that. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to see what you wear at Innovation Awards today.
That as well.
Okay. Dima.
Brian and Sam, maybe we'll start with you. So you guys have like experiences that's really focused on connection and communication, which is, I played both of those. They're really fun for me. Can you tell a little bit more about what was the inspiration to create the experience like this? Brian, maybe let's start with you.
Of course. So yeah, we've been creating social experiences on Roblox for a very long time. I remember my first experience that I created was a social experience to gather people who are having the same passion and interest together into one space. So when we saw the 17 plus category release, we thought this would be like an awesome opportunity to get mature and genuine conversations in.
So for Neighbors, we really wanted a fast way to meet new people. Because in Neighbors, if you're unaware, you quickly match with other people, kind of like Omegle, if you're aware of that. But you are constantly getting put around, and we just wanted an experience where you could meet people as quick as possible. And we've made the 17 plus version to meet more mature audiences, and that was a main part of it.
Cool. What's your most favorite feature in Neighbors?
In Neighbors, my favorite thing, I definitely our voice chat tools. Some of them are just really annoying, honestly. They make for funny experiences.
What's the most annoying one?
Definitely the helium balloon.
Has anyone used it in the audience? I know you have, yes. I have used it. It is one of the most annoying things. It really is. You all should try it after. It is so annoying. I guess next question I have for you is for Nicholas. You've gotten to 2 million followers doing videos of blogs. So I am curious, do you have any tips and tricks for our creator community in how they could integrate video API in what kind of content might go viral or might get a lot of attention from other users?
Yeah, virality is obviously like something that's super weird and no one's quite sussed it out yet. Apart from Mr. Beast, but apart from that, I don't really think anyone can really always know that something is going to go viral. But I think what triggers viral moments is something unexpected or something new. So I think games that are kind of chaotic or have kind of something funny, or also maybe a secret. I know that, I don't know if a lot of you play Dress to Impress, but there's the main game and then there's lore about the Lana the Nail Lady, who's this, there's a whole backstory about that, and that makes it even more viral because there's people who want to kind of want to know more about that story. So I think, it's just kind of stay unexpected and keep posting stuff that's chaotic and something like that, and that will go.
If I remember, you said there's a secret room in Dress to Impress that the lady uses.
Yes, I think it was just removed actually, but she has some crazy games. It's scary. Prepare yourselves.
I guess secret room is one tip that you all can use.
For sure.
As Sam and Theron, I talked about this in a panel. Your experience is integrated with audio API. Voice seems a big part of the experience. Can you tell the audience what was your experience with audio API? What was the motivation to integrate it?
Yeah, so in OnTap, we have kind of an area where there's a lot of these focus points in the game and people kind of just walk around. And something that we notice is that you try to go on your own little area, you might be on one side of a wall, on another side, and we notice that the sound just kind of comes through the wall. One of the things that we were immediately thinking about when we saw the voice API was having these zones where, if you're in a room and you're on the other side, it kind of muffles. So that's one of the things that we used voice API for, and that's one of the things that we've been seeing making a big difference in enhancing our games.
So in Neighbors, one of the things when you're matching with people and you're currently in the menu, you can actually hear your party members if you're in a party. And that was important so that you could communicate during the downtime while you're matchmaking. But a big part of Audio API was also that we just wanted to make comedic things like those tools that allow you to talk in funny voices and be annoying and ruin people's days. Like that was, that was an important step for us.
What is the one Audio API feature you wish you had?
It's a tough call. There's so many things that you can do with it already that it's hard to. I don't know what's not possible. I haven't tried everything.
Wow, Audio API team loves this.
Oh,
There's so many possibilities already.
How many days after Audio API was released did you use it?
Is it possible to go below 0? Because
great.
we were flipping flags and messing with stuff early and trying to figure it out.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. I hope Audio API team is listening to that.
Yeah, I mean, like, also, we use it as well. Like, when the beta came out, we were messing around in studio, thinking about all the ways you can do it. I know they have the helium balloon. We have a size potion, and, like, when you get down, it makes you super high-pitched. I can get very annoying, too, so.
Yeah.
Nice. I think you should have an annoying competition.
Oh, man.
I think that would be fun.
You'd win.
Okay, Sam, you mentioned parties,
yes.
right? So you already have parties in your experience. Maybe let's start there. What Neighbors uses parties for?
Yeah, so in Neighbors, when you're talking to these random people and you're getting matched, so you want to talk to your friends at the same time. And so you can use the party system that we have implemented that you can be matched together with these, with your friends, with other random people. And you can actually make like ginormous parties of 20 people and just fill the house. And again, it's one of those, we aim for annoying features that we like. So.
Is annoying feature like a secret sauce?
It is I think that honestly makes really good content, and when you're just talking to someone and then they start screaming and then they skip you, it's a perfect moment.
Has anyone had that moment on Neighbors? Yeah? I'm seeing a few nods. Nice. Tell us about it maybe in the Q&A section.
Okay, I have a question to maybe everybody on the panel. So you've heard for 2 days us talk about party. Now, how do you think it changes their experience on a platform or experience in your game, in your experience?
Yeah, so in OnTap, if anyone has played it, there are many secret little areas in the game that are just hidden in the back. And pretty much as of right now, you can do it with your friends or do it on your own. But we were thinking in the future, it could be really awesome to have these parties, to be able to collaborate with other users and go into these secret areas and solve puzzles. And that will be like a social catalyst to finding new items around in the game.
Yeah, and then I just want to add on to that. One other thing that we have in OnTap is we try to keep all the UI very, limited. We don't have a lot of things on the screen, and we're thinking of using parties as a very intentional way of being able to find others. So maybe offering some type of teleportation, feature for people who are in parties.
Yeah, I mean, we're really just going to try and incorporate parties into our current system and make it basically just merge them and make one great system.
Nice. I just want to call out for the audience, if you have any questions, you can start lining up at the mic. And we'll have one more question on the panel.
Well, I want to maybe let opportunity Nick to speak about party. You were in a party demo.
Yeah.
You might have your special take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in terms of content, party is going to be so beneficial because right now using off-app platforms to communicate can get kind of tricky on how to capture voice, and just also it will be just easier to capture moments with your friends, and those chaotic fun moments that do go viral will be just much easier to just integrate into the platform. And I think it's an amazing opportunity to get out there and make more content and videos. So yeah.
Nice. I see people lining up, so maybe I'll ask one question from the audience first.
Hey, yeah. So I was watching the video recording stuff that you guys announced, and that looked fantastic. And so this is probably more of a question for the Roblox side, and maybe even better for the video team. But The one thing that I was wondering that wasn't really clear to me in the presentation was it looks like our capture point is like at set locations in the experiences that we identify as like, this is like a high value moment. But a lot of those don't really happen until, or like we don't know that those are going to happen until after they've passed. And other platforms such as like Xbox or PlayStation allow you to record like clips of like historical, like the last 2 minutes or whatever. Is that a feature that we can expect either at launch or in the future?
So yes, so we are actively talking about it, and Chris, you can chime in as well. We do want creators to be able to keep recording, like in 30-second buffers. So when you do prompt that something happened, you have that recording already done, and you can prompt, and then the user control is on the fact that do they want to save it or share it out. But you could ongoing keep recording in the background.
Okay, and so then to follow up on that, can you do concurrent recordings at all? Because maybe I started at the wrong point, and then I can identify, okay, I need to move this up a little bit, so we want to like start re-recording essentially.
Chris? I think it's a little premature for us to yeah.
specific answer on that one. But that use case makes sense, but we're early on developing that API. So, Chris, do you want to use the mic?
Yeah, I can just repeat the answer. So it's something we're thinking about. It's the first version, so it's a little premature to start there, but it's a good use case for us to keep in mind. And as people use it more, we'll add it as it makes sense.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking the question.
Hello.
Hello.
So I have a question more suited for Nicholas. I was wondering, you as a content creator, what are the best features that us developers can add to our games to help you connect more socially to your audiences?
That's a really good question. I think the one thing that is like so small but so beneficial is a lot of games have UI everywhere. Like the whole screen is kind of like covered with like buttons and stuff, which is obviously great for the game. But when it comes to content capture, it's really awkward. Like to like crop out like different parts of it, and the graphics are also lowered. So I think, and I don't know if this is more like on like the Roblox side of things or like individual developers, but I think like a photo mode or just like a mode to clear out like UI would be so beneficial in every game just to get instances without capturing everything around it, but just like the actual game itself is like super beneficial. So yeah, I'd say that's something that developers could definitely help integrate. I've already seen some games do it, but yeah, it would be great for more.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, so my question is more for the video and capture API team. So right now, the way I understand it is, you are capturing the user's perspective, right? But sometimes you may want to, give the user some other perspective, right? So it's like, oh, I want to put this camera here. I don't really want to put it where you are looking. So is there any plans to be able to at least say, oh, capture this from here, take this photo from here, or maybe even move this video from here to here?
It's something we are very actively talking about, and a lot of us really want to have that be a capability at some point. Not ready to announce a timeline yet, but it's definitely something we are very passionate about.
And one other question. Do you guys already have like maybe a maximum length of, for example, how long the video captures will be?
I believe it's 30 seconds to begin with, and then we will try to give more flexibility both in the API and on the platform side for either developers to decide how much you want those trigger moments to be, and for users to decide what they want to capture.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go on this side.
Okay, so you guys talked about. Sorry, give me a second to adjust to this. I hate hearing my own voice, but.
Me too.
Okay, you guys talked a lot about text chat service earlier, but. Wow. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm still getting used to this, but when can we expect to see channel support in the UI for text chat service? That's still something that's missing, and we're still on Lua Chat because of that.
It's
when?
Please.
Okay, this is a secret we will reveal at the end of this.
Okay.
No, he'll answer. He's right there. Raj, you're responsible.
I don't know whether we should give like expect timeline, but I want to say it's being worked on right now.
We're working on it right now. If they didn't come to RDC, they would have been writing that code right now.
Got it. Thank you. And one more thing. There's still going to be more performance improvements on the new text chat service, correct? Because
yes,
in large experience, well, you guys know already. You've seen the forum post.
I assume you're referring to Experience Chat Main, right?
Yes.
No problem, no problem.
We get it.
That slides that I showed with 10% improvements, it's actually coming from Experience Chat Main. And as I mentioned, we're going to do more. There are concrete plans, like that folks also coding just a second, right?
Yeah, just a second.
Thank you.
Let's do one more on this side.
Thank you so much for whoever lowered the mic. I had to get on my tippy toes to even reach it.
That's the problem of my life.
Same, honestly. But I saw that in one of the previews for OnTap, it's possible to lower the volume of people using voice chat. In the future, would there ever be any sort of slider for individual people incorporated in the menu? You know how there's the button to mute people in voice chat? Is there ever going to be a slider to just lower people's volume? Because some people's microphones are just really loud. Or too quiet.
It's the biggest debate in the Roblox company.
How is this a debate?
It is the biggest debate in our world, but it's something we are talking about. I think a lot, as you've seen, a lot of the focus on voice has been around getting it out to more people, improving core performance, making it easy for people to use, and that's double the volume. I think we are now at a point as we think about next year, we will try to think about what more features are needed. So it's a great question. It's something we'll keep in mind as we think about next year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. One more on this side.
Hi there. So you talked about how in the party system, there would be a separate voice chat specifically for the parties. My question is, how will this affect spatial voice chat? Will players be able to hear each other at all times anywhere they are in the map?
Yeah, so when users are with party voice and voice-enabled experience, there will be a platform-level toggle. So user can switch between the two, and so you can hear only one voice channel at a time. You can either hear everybody in the party or switch to spatial voice and hear everyone spatially. And we'll really try to make it clear from user perspective which channels they're on.
What about things like horror games where they rely on taking away information from the player? So is there going to be any way for developers to change the way that this specific voice system works? Like the voice effects, the audio API, are any of these things going to apply to the party voice chat, or totally separate, like a Discord call?
It's totally separate, but I didn't catch. Can you tell me more about the part where it sounds like the game itself depends, or experience itself depends on the voice to work?
Yes. So I think a great example of a game that relies on this would be Lethal Company. When someone walks away from you, you can no longer hear them, but not being able to hear everyone around you just makes the game a lot scarier whenever you feel like alone or when you're just with one other person.
Yeah. And Garima, feel free to add, but my thinking about this is that there are some games where folks, probably due to gameplay, gonna be more on spatial voice channel. And even, let's say if the whole party is already together, they can all switch to spatial voice and use experience voice from that perspective. But there are some experiences where they can just use party voice directly and that doesn't interfere with gameplay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. I know this was the last session, so thank you. I'll hope to see you all tonight.
Thank you to our panelists.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks all.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to welcome you here all today and to this important topic. My name is Remy Milan. I'm the Vice President of Trust and Safety Operations and Public Affairs at Roblox. Roblox is a platform where people can come together to reimagine how they connect, create, and express themselves through immersive shared experiences.
Hi, everyone. Thank you guys so much for coming. I'm Carolyn Devine, and I lead communications for Calm, which is the leading mental wellness brand and the #1 app for sleep, meditation, and relaxation. While Mental Health Awareness Month is every month for Calm, it's actually nationally recognized now, but I think it's more than ever we can say in the heightened stress that's going on, mental health is something that we should be talking about.
Well, we're thrilled that you all joined us today, and we're going to hear from a panel of experts on mental health and the metaverse. Now, these are both big topics, but we have a great panel, and we look forward to the conversation with them about what the future of mental health might look like in the metaverse, and what we should prioritize now in order to be having successful outcomes in the future.
And the conversation doesn't stop today. This is an area that Calm and Roblox are deeply committed to. And over the summer, we're going to be convening experts in the mental health, parenting, and tech space to create a framework that we'll share with the industry at large for how we should be prioritizing mental health in the metaverse. So if this is something that also you might be interested in, please let me know afterwards.
And while everyone, we'd like to thank you for joining us here in person. We're also very fortunate to have a number of people joining us via live stream. So we have participants from all over the United States, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, Belgium, and Australia. So these are truly global issues, and we're well represented globally. I also would like to say we're very fortunate and very thankful that a number of partners are joining us and participating. In particular, the Child Mind Institute, NAMI, the Trevor Project, the JED Foundation, NIDA, Internet Matters, the Center for Appearance Research, PTA, PFLAG, kindness.org, and representatives from Cornell, Stanford, CUNY, USC. Thank you so much for being part of this.
Thank you. And I know you're all in the virtual live stream, so sending you all hellos. So we just really want to thank this administration for treating mental health as health, especially Dr. Murthy's office. And for real progress to be made, this needs to be integrated into our daily lives. This needs to be integrated into work, into our families, the conversations we're having, and most certainly into digital spaces. So in Calm tradition, we start every big meeting with a mindfulness exercise. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you meditate. I know everyone's like, oh my God, what we come to. But we're just going to take in one collective breath. So breathe in, breathe out. All right.
Thank you that was great. All right, so just before we get started, I would like to introduce Dave Bazuki, who is the CEO of Roblox. He's not able to join us in person, but he has prepared some remarks for us, which he would like to share. So if we can roll tape, please.
Thank you all for being here. I'm excited to welcome you to today's event. I'd especially like to thank Calm and Dr. Murthy and their team for investing in this important discussion, promoting positive mental health in the metaverse. Like Roblox, Dr. Murthy and Calm have long demonstrated a strong commitment to this issue for people of all ages, including teens and adults. Mental health is a personal issue for my family, and my wife and I have focused our philanthropic efforts on bipolar research and metabolic neuroscience, which is very pertinent to today's discussion. At Roblox, we believe that talking to experts, learning from others, and convening these conversations is an important way to build a thoughtful, safe, and inclusive space for all. Thank you for being here and enjoy the discussion.
And now, without further ado, I'd like to invite our panel to take their seats here up front and would leave you in the very capable hands of Julia Dennison, who will lead the conversation. Thank you.
All right, can you hear me? I'm Julia Dennison. I am the Senior Editorial Director at parents.com. And I am here to moderate this panel. I think it's going to be a really great discussion around mental health and the metaverse, specifically, my passion point, both as a mom, but also in my role at Parents, is thinking about the kids and teens and how this pandemic and how they're feeling and what parents can do to support them and, caregivers in general, as well as the rest of us as we kind of raise this next generation of kids. So right along the line, I'm going to go. We have Eric Waldo. He's Chief Engagement Officer at the U.S. Surgeon General's office. Hey, Eric. We have Dr. Kimberly Alexander, a clinical psychologist at the Child Mind Institute. Next, we have Tammy Bomick, the Vice President of Civility and Partnerships at Roblox. And then Chris Mosnick, Chief Clinical Officer at COM. Thanks for coming on the panel, everybody. I'm looking forward to this discussion. So I was laughing because I was going to ask my audience of parents if they had any questions ahead of this panel. And the number one question across the board was, what's the metaverse? And where do we even begin with understanding it in context of kids and parents themselves? So Tammy, will you start by telling us a little bit about what exactly, like Metaverse 101, what is it? I'm sure you all know about it, but for anyone who's unsure.
So let me clarify some things. I think metaverse is a very scary word for a lot of people because they don't understand what it is. We at Roblox actually are really kind of pulling back. We don't think of ourselves necessarily as the metaverse because we've always, from the first day that we developed our platform, it was all about creating a 3D immersive place where people could simply come together. They could learn together. They could work together. They could play together, they'd create together. And quite simply, the metaverse is an online world where you can do just that. We have free development tools. We have a tool that's free called Studio, where people of all ages can come and create experiences, place it on our platform, and now, fast forward a number of years, almost 15 years, we have millions and millions and millions of experiences on our Roblox platform, all created by our community.
Excellent. So are we all going to be living in the metaverse all the time and say 15, 20 years down the line? What's it going to be like?
I hope not. I think that I think that Roblox, as well as what others call the metaverse, it's a place that's a complement truly to real life. Mm-hmm. And it definitely serves a purpose for so many different types of people. And, I think what we'll all discuss here is the healthy balance between technology usage and the platforms that exist out there, and then real life interactions as well.
So I think editorially, one of the biggest challenges we had is before the pandemic, we were always talking about screen time and trying to get our kids off of screens. And then the pandemic happened and their entire school life was on screens from home. And then their entire social life was on screens from home. So it's not, we just sort of changed our idea as parents about what it meant to have screen time and quality and everything else. But of course, we're seeing a lot of stories coming out as we and I don't want to say the end of this pandemic, but as we kind of come out of it, that the kids and teens have taken a really hard hit. And Eric, I know you just recently released a report on the state of youth mental health, especially when it comes to their digital experiences. I'd love to have you give everybody a little bit of an overview on that.
Well, thank you so much. And again, I want to thank everyone for being here today and everyone who's joining us online. We know that young people have had a mental health crisis that predates COVID. The statistics, the reports have been clear that our young people have been in crisis for a long time, and it's only certainly been exacerbated by COVID. And that's why Dr. Murthy issued the report, the Surgeon General's Advisory in December, calling attention to the youth mental health crisis. I really do encourage you to take a look at that report. It has calls for an all of society approach where we need more research. We need to figure out how to have that right balance around technology. And we need to make sure that we're applying resources to those communities that need it the most. This has been a crisis, but it's a crisis, of course, that has affected communities of color, vulnerable communities even more so. I won't belabor reading you 1,000 statistics. That's what Comms 101, they always tell you, please don't read 1,000 statistics, but I want to read one because it's really powerful to me. In early 2021, emergency department visits to the United States for suspected suicide attempts were 51% higher for adolescent girls and 4% higher for adolescent boys compared to the same time period in early 2019. That's in our advisory. That's just one example of how this is manifesting in real life terms. People have that feeling of worry, and we know as ourselves and as members of the public during COVID-19, we're all feeling this crisis of confidence. We all know that there's more we can do to heal ourselves, to heal our communities, to create connection, and ultimately to show young people that this is not something to stigmatize, but it's actually something to embrace and something that we collectively as a country need to improve, not just for our young people, but for all of us, to show us how to have a strong mental health life in school, at home, at work, in our civil space, in our government, everywhere. And so I would say while we're talking about youth mental health and we're talking about the metaverse today, it's for all of us everywhere to really have the robust civic space that we want and the society that we deserve.
Amen. And I will admit that I do spend a little too much time on TikTok. And I will say that I feel that there is some reassurance seeing Gen Z. It feels like Gen Z is very open about talking about mental health and not stigmatizing it so much and embracing the importance of therapy. Are you seeing that as sort of the next generation coming up?
Thank you so much for that question. We absolutely have been seeing this from young people. We've actually been traveling around the country holding youth mental health roundtables with young people from elementary to college, talking to them about their experiences. And constantly you hear this refrain that our generation, the young people, Gen Z, they say, we're okay talking about it. We're okay sharing our feelings, being very public on social media or elsewhere about the challenges they're facing. But what they also share is that they still feel the stigma of maybe their parents' generation or the older generation. Hey, if I let my parents know that I'm in crisis, I'm worried that they'll feel bad or they feel like they've failed. We actually did a visit to Thompson Elementary School, not too far from here in Washington, D.C., elementary school, talking to the parents and talking to the teachers and talking to the young people. What you heard the teachers say was that these students oftentimes have had to grow up too quickly. They are parenting their parents who lost a job, who couldn't provide, who are feeling the distress of losing family members and so much during this pandemic, and that we haven't had a moment to collectively process that trauma and grieve, and are now jumping so quickly back into testing and assessment and acting as if things are back to normal. So we have to both recognize that it's great that this generation will tell us their feelings. Maybe sometimes we feel too much, but we need to make it safe for them. And we also need to make sure they have access to the resources. It can't be that you're sharing this problem and then there's nowhere to go.
Right. And actually, we covered a TikTok where a kid was saying that they feel like they have to be the therapist to their parents because their parents aren't going to therapy. And it's really interesting to think about that generational divide. Dr. Alexander, I would love to hear and hearing statistics like what you just quoted, Eric, is really horrifying from a parent, as a parent. And is there anything, what would you say to parents who really just want to be there for their kids? They want to be involved, but also want to allow them to have some agency when they're on the internet and on digital apps. What would you say that parents can do to most support their kids' mental health?
Definitely. Thank you. I think that, what's most important when I'm working with parents, when I'm working with the patients that I see, that honestly, there are so many strategies that we teach in session, and that I think at times prompting parents to be able to engage in those strategies as well. So something that we started off with, some deep breathing, right? Taking a nice, slow, deep breath in. I think that, yes, I can teach patients how to deep breathe, but then sometimes at home it would be helpful if parents engage in the same deep breathing with their child. So the child says, I'm, feeling very anxious, I feel very upset. And then parents saying like, I hear you. I understand that you're upset. I can see that you're feeling really stressed out. Let's take a moment to pull ourselves into a nice calmer state. Let's take a deep breath. I'll do it with you. Right. So I think that some of it is about modeling. Some of it is modeling healthy routines, healthy ways of coping with anxiety or sadness or worry or anger, and parents really modeling that for their kids.
I totally agree. And actually, my daughter's only almost 6, but we use the Calm app, and I try and sort of do deep breathing and meditate a little bit with her, and she's very into meditating. And I love that this whole generation just like knows all about it from such a young age, thanks to apps like Calm. Chris, can you talk a little bit about how technology like your own is helping to support people through the sort of stress and anxiety that we've been going through?
Sure, happy to. So when it comes to digital applications in mental health, the one big advantage that we have is that we're meeting people where they are. Whether we like it or not, phones are a part of our everyday society, and being able to use the phone, use applications in tech to be able to help people is something that we really do well at Calm. And it's able to provide, one, access to a lot of people. We can go at scale when it comes to mental health. That's why I came to Calm, because that ability is just really hard to do. You think about all the applications out there around mental health. How many do you actually know, right? Calm's brand is a very strong one because it's taken mental health from the beginning and really stayed true to it to be able to help a lot of people. And then when it also comes to tech, we have another thing going for us. We can help people in the moment. Mental health, one of the things that's hamstrung it is that people going through stress and anxiety, getting help in the moment is very hard to do. Meaning, if you're going through stress and anxiety, usually you have to wait to go see your therapist, if you have a therapist, or a medication. It doesn't kick in fast enough to really help with stress and anxiety. But an application where you're practicing evidence-based practices and using a technique that really can help you in the moment, that's what we can do extremely well.
That's excellent. And it's much needed, because I feel like one of the biggest issues we see from our large audience of parents is the fact that there's not enough access to mental health, to professionals, to therapy. Often insurance doesn't cover it. And it's you sort of end up wondering where to turn for yourself, and also especially for your kids. Eric, you must see that. And what kind of policy changes do you think, or what can companies do to help get people access to professionals?
It's such an important question. And I think you heard President Biden talk about it in the State of the Union, actually calling for things like more school counselors in schools. Today, on average, you have one counselor for every 486 students.
I saw that stat.
And
Wow.
in some places, maybe we have any Californians online or in the audience, it's been as much as one counselor for every 1,000 students. We're asking those counselors to do things like not just mental health, but college advising, proctoring, all the things we ask counselors to do so much. And of course, we know that in the schools and among communities that need those resources the most, they have the least. There's a nonprofit here in DC called Education Trust. And they talk about the fact that I think there's something like 4 million students don't have access to a school counselor, but they have a police officer in their school. So what are we doing to make sure that we're increasing things like counselors, school psychologists, clinicians? How are we making a school or other community hubs places that are anchor institutions where families and communities can go when they need that help? And to your point about technology, are we thinking about, and can tech think that they really want to go all in certain communities that we know have been chronically underserved, underinvested, and distressed? We know that those places are margins. They aren't getting the counselor. They aren't getting access to, they're in a food desert. They're seeing so many codependencies that are keeping them from being able to rise. And I think we, as leaders, it's incumbent on us not to just turn and say, wow, it's too bad that's that way, and it's always been that way. We need to say, we want to disrupt the status quo. And disrupt the status quo, we need to do things fundamentally different. That's what's exciting about technology from my perspective. But we also have to be intentional and think about, what are we measuring? What are we asking? And can we measure what's happening in the communities that are the most distressed? And what's the commitment that technology, the corporations, that cities, the communities will make to say, we're going to measure it and we're going to change it. We're going to say, here's the mental health goal for this community, for these young people, for these distressed students who need our help.
Excellent. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So Tammy, now I feel like Roblox is so wonderful for fostering imagination, and really kids can get on there and do so many things. And the metaverse world is kind of their oyster, which is excellent. We want to foster that in that creativity in kids, and parents want to be able to let go and let them have a safe experience on the app. But sometimes you hear things about it not always feeling 100% safe, or parents are a little bit unsure about what it means when their kids go on Roblox. Can you give a little bit of a Roblox 101? And then if you have any sort of advice for parents on how they talk to their kids about being safe on the platform?
Absolutely, I would love to. So very oftentimes, kids are finding Roblox on their own, and their parents kind of come along. They're like, "Oh, my child is always on Roblox. What is this?" Right? I think you probably hear the same thing. And the first thing that we talk about is know that what your kids are doing in terms of setting their age when they sign up for the account. One of the biggest things that they can do is make sure that their age is correct when they sign up for their account. We have filters all throughout the platform, but for kids under the age of 13, definitely much more stringent. There are also customized parental settings where you can choose what's right for your family, because one choice is not right for everybody. So you can chat with no one, chat with friends only, or chat with everyone, for example. We have a whole lineup of other tools that are available. If you go to our settings, which is on the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you can click on that and you can see a bevy of privacy and safety settings that you can customize. So that's the first thing that that's like the blocking and tackling. The second thing that I always recommend is, and it really is a bonding opportunity, to go in and have your child play with you, teach me what you're doing. And it is so much fun. We have heard from so many that they have become so close, and it's become a nightly activity where they're playing with their kids, they're laughing, they're enjoying being with their child and understanding the vernacular. And it's similar to what I consider when you're driving in the car, because I have two daughters, I would say, "How's your day?" And they're like, "It's fine." But where I would get the most information was when this is old times, when I was in the car driving them somewhere. And these little nuggets would come out just haphazardly, randomly. Similarly, now in the digital space with Roblox, they find out and learn so much about what's going on with their kids on their daily life. I do want to address the importance of addressing trauma with one quick story. So there was a child. He lost his father to mental illness when he was 2. His little brother was 2 weeks old. 10 years of the family dealing with a lot of trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder. He was 11. And when I got to know him, his name was Luke. And he created an experience on Roblox. And it was an obstacle course. We called it an obby. And he created this obstacle course where on the very bottom, it was gray and dark and very dismal. And he got information about depression and anxiety. And he made this obby. And as you moved your way through the obby, it would get lighter and brighter. And he wanted to destigmatize depression and anxiety and teach others about it. And when you got to the very top of the obby, it was a confetti party. And in his own words, he described that his entire life, this is an 11-year-old boy, so this is in his words, he felt like he was on a train, and there was a big boulder on top of the train tracks, and on the other side was Dad and his family, and they were having a pizza party. And he could never get through to them. But when he created this experience on Roblox, the boulder moved away, and he was able to join his family. And it slayed me, because it made me realize how powerful technology can be for helping PTSD and people going through trauma.
As a real tool for supporting this. And that's a really amazing story. So Dr. Alexander, I feel like we talk a lot about with technology like Roblox, there's a lot you can do in terms of parental controls, and you can make sure that you're aware of what they're doing and limit their access, et cetera, et cetera. But I feel like you can only do so much, because kids are living in the digital space. They're digital natives. That's where they socialize in the pandemic. And now more than ever potentially, what kind of conversations should you be having with your kids outside of these platforms so that when they go on to these platforms, they do it in a safe and healthy way?
Yeah, I think that the first step is to really open up communication with your child, right? So the basic check-ins of how your day was, right? How are you feeling? What do you feel when you are on Roblox? What do you feel when you're on social media? Do you generally feel good? Do you leave feeling anxious or worried? I think that starting the conversation with just asking them how they're feeling is a huge step in just opening up the lines of communication. Separate from that, children understanding like when I feel particularly anxious, who can I seek out? What can I do to help myself cope? I think that parents can serve as role models to showing that, sometimes mom feels a little worried. Sometimes mom feels a little anxious. And this is how mom handles it. This is how dad handles it. And then working through those practices with your child. I think that the other piece is sleep. I think that sometimes what we find is that the more hours that you spend on social media, 3 hours or more, it usually decreases the amount of sleep that you're actually having. And we know that sleep is a huge part of development and living a healthier life. So I think that the other piece is really checking in with your child and setting boundaries on the limits of time that they spend on social media in some way.
And then do you think that since the pandemic, it's been a little bit of a golden opportunity for parents to check in? Do you think that parents are thinking a little bit more about how they support their kids coming out of the pandemic?
Yeah, I think that they're definitely checking in, looking in to figure out how can I approach this conversation? How can I give my child the autonomy as well as allowing them to know that they can seek support from their parents. And that parents, I think sometimes in the work that I do, I notice that parents struggle with like, what's the right thing to say, right? And I think that what I really try to do in my sessions, especially with parents, is like I model some of the language and then I role play. I'll play the child. And I want them to practice using the language of validating first, acknowledging that, I totally get it. You really enjoy being on Roblox. You really want to play this game. It looks exciting. I've played it. I've had fun as well. And we also know that, you're really great when you get a lot of sleep. Right? So how about we play for another hour or play for another 20 minutes. And then when 20 minutes are up, then we'll move on and do something else. We'll get ready for bed. We'll read a book together. But at the end of the day, you're setting the boundaries in a way that validates that they really enjoy this activity, as well as there are other things that they can do with their time separate from that.
And speaking of tools to help you fall asleep, Calm is actually, one that I rely on. Anything that gets my almost 6-year-old to sleep, I love. So, but what I love about Calm is that it's an app that both parents and the kids can use. I'd love to hear a little bit about anything that you have coming up in the future, where you see the direction going when it comes to these mental health apps.
Sure. So the most important thing, first and foremost, is that whenever you're in mental health, what we're committed to is that when we do something, we're going to have research guiding it and evidence-based practices that is going to help somebody, right? That's so often overlooked in mental health and it's not talked about enough, but something we're committed to is our science team is going to make sure, hey, this is helping. So what we did in the pandemic is we listened to our members. What ended up happening is a lot of parents were saying, we've got problems. My kids aren't sleeping. This is really troublesome. So we created Calm Kids, and largely Calm Kids is, lullabies, sleep stories, all the stuff you love, right? Thomas the Train, my favorite, the Minions, all of that stuff. That's the engagement factor that pulls in a kid. And then the actual science behind it, there's so much that goes in to actually helping a person fall asleep. I was just working with our content team out in California a couple of weeks ago, and they just gave me a million different techniques to help people calm down, right? As a psychologist, some, but really when you start paying attention, there's a lot to it. You start talking in a deeper voice and people start relaxing.
I want to hear all the tips, actually.
Right? Exactly, right? So there's so much to it, but that's all in the science that's in our app. And it helps so many parents. And they were able to do it together And that's so important because Tammy, your story about it's so wonderful to hear a child working through their mental health issues. Like my daughters, I discovered Roblox when my daughters opened me up to it when I was, during the pandemic. And what they ended up saying was now they're 12 and 14, but they were younger. My 10-year-old trapped my 12-year-old in Roblox. And she was so proud because the older sister, it was wonderful, but it was a bonding moment in the strangest way, but the most fun way. But when it comes to technology, being able to pull the whole family in so that it's shared is a theme I think we're hearing across, right? Is that you can't just allow isolation to happen and expect good things to happen. That's essentially a big part of what happened in the pandemic, is that social isolation drove a lot of the depression and anxiety that we saw. So when you're able to use technology to bring a family together, you're really making a huge impact.
Can I been on that? I think it's such a critical point that you talked about, and certainly Dr. Murthy has written about this before in his previous stint as Surgeon General on the crisis around social isolation and loneliness. And it's wonderful that technology can, again, as we've talked about, all things in moderation, using as connection, right? That's really critical. I think it's also important, again, for us to acknowledge we're talking about trauma and isolation. I mentioned some statistics. We think about COVID. I just, again, want to remind ourselves just what an anxious world we're currently living in. The world is at war. I think about, we're talking about caregivers. I thought about your story talking to parents. And then I think about, the hundreds of thousands of young people who lost parents during COVID-19 and who don't have a parent anymore. I think about what's going on in states like Texas and Florida with, don't say gay bills or banning, surgeries for transgender youth. Young people are going through a lot. And it's really interesting. We hosted a roundtable with young people in Florida, a closed press conversation. And the young people, LGBTQ plus young people, said, please don't forget about us because we're here. We're going through a lot. And yes, it's great that our generation is stepping up, but you're the adults. You're the ones who are supposed to make this easier for us. And so I do think it's wonderful to hear about how products or initiatives can help ease that. But I do think, again, when I think about what my role is coming from the federal government and trying to inspire you all, is to think, how are we setting out maybe some moonshot goals around how we want the world to look differently in terms of mental health for young people? What would it look like in the same way that we have goals around products we want to sell, revenue we want to have? What are our mental health goals? And what would that look like, not just for all of our country, but especially for those communities that we know are most at risk, who need this the most? How would we set those goals? What would it mean for us to say, this is our social isolation goal to reduce in this community, not just for young people, but for old people? I have, my parents are in their 80s. I think about how isolated they became because of COVID-19 and how hard that's been for them. We need to think about these mental health problems the same way we tackle everything else, which I love that tech understands data, measurement, and beta testing. And how are we just doing that and doing it as rigorously as possible, and then sharing that and disseminating what's working really widely with schools, with communities, with practitioners, so that all of us can get that incredible learning. Because again, so much of what we see, and again, I spent a lot of time in public education, we know that a great teacher changes a young person's life. I saved you money to get a master's in ed. If you have a great teacher, it's going to change your life. If you have a bad teacher, really hard to overcome that. But we know that the great teachers aren't in all the schools where they need to be for the students who need them the most. It's the same thing with mental health resources. We need to make sure we're getting those resources to the communities that need them the most. And I'm really excited about how technology can scale that more quickly.
Would you mind if I tagged in on that?
Go for it.
So I cannot even begin to tell you how I vibe with what you just said. I see it every day on Roblox. And, over the past 2 years, it's been tough for everyone. One of the things that is the thing that I'm most proud of at Roblox is time and time again, the community that we have created that is so supportive. There are a lot of kids and teens that don't find connections in real life. They have come onto Roblox and they have found community, they have found acceptance. There are kids that are bullied in real life. They come onto Roblox, they find community, they find people that are kinder than how they have been treated in real life. And it's been a literal lifesaver. We look at Roblox. In fact, our CEO, Dave Mazuki, who you heard from before, said it himself, right? Roblox is a platform to bring people together, and it really, really is just that. Roblox has become a lifeline in a lot of respects, especially during the pandemic. We saw huge milestone moments get taken away from our kids, graduations, birthday parties, weddings, things like that. There have been very creative people that have created experiences on Roblox, virtual graduations, where their grandparents from other parts of the world could join, and it would bring people together. It would bring people, neurodivergent communities together, where they may have felt in real life that they were not accepted, or kids who were going through cancer treatments who had no hair, that was embarrassed. They could be who they wanted to be on Roblox and just be a kid, be accepted for who they are. So there are huge benefits to mental health and resilience on different platforms. Technology can really help.
I don't know about you all, but ever since becoming a mom, like anything will make me cry. I'm like on the verge of tears. It's so moving. And what's really moving is that, yes, kids are so resilient, but it's like, I wish they didn't have to be so resilient. It is so hard to watch them. It's even little things like my daughter now transitioning to not wearing masks, but she's only ever known school wearing a mask. And like just tiny moments where they're so kind of resilient, but then it's like heartbreaking that they have to be. Dr. Alexander, what would you say? We do a lot of stories on parents around talking to your kids. How do you talk to your kids? The new about news and what's going on, and so much trauma out there. What do you recommend when there's just so much hardship on TV and we're seeing, the news every day, so tough? What are ways to talk to kids about that in a way that they can feel like they are seen and understood?
Yeah. I think that, I hate to keep harping on modeling, but I think that the best way to learn is through modeling and seeing these healthy habits reinforced, right? Through seeing parents engage in them. So, you're watching TV and the news comes up and there's something that seems very traumatic or very scary. I would say that we all generally feel those emotions. We feel fear, we feel worry, right? I think calling that out, and I can't emphasize that enough with parents, call it out. Say like, you know what? I just watched that news report and I feel anxious. What am I feeling? My heart might be racing. I might feel a little, I have worried thoughts. These are the types of worried thoughts. And these are going to be the ways that I try to think about it. What are you feeling? And asking children to share their thoughts as well. I know that sometimes we speak in very shorthand language when we say, don't worry about it. Just relax, chill out. And I think that language can be very vague for kids, especially when they're now learning how to process these events that they're experiencing day in and day out. So I think being very specific in your language about, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm feeling physically. This is what I'm thinking. And then what would I do to challenge those thoughts? And then in the times where you struggle with figuring out what you would tell yourself, right? Leaning on some, social support, some mental health support can also be helpful. Some of the work that I do with parents is just working on their own worry thoughts and helping them kind of see it from another perspective. And then in that way, they take that home to their children and they work on challenging and reshaping some of the thoughts that the children are having about their own fears.
It's such a balance because as a parent, you feel like you want to protect your kids and tell them it's going to be okay. But we don't always know that it's going to be okay ourselves. And it's okay to have those emotions. And I do think that you see as sort of millennials become parents and now Gen Z becoming parents, I think that there is going to be a real paradigm shift in how caregivers and how the grown-ups in kids' lives talk about their emotions and mental health. So I'm feeling quietly optimistic. Yes. I don't know if you feel the same.
Yes, definitely. I do think, I identify with what you're saying. I've experienced it even in my own sessions of wondering, like, should I have this conversation? I mean, this child, it seems to be aware, or these conversations about what's happening in media, what's happening, for example, with the war, that, they're aware and they have opinions. And then is it appropriate to have a conversation about that with the child. I think that because they're asking questions, I think you want to lean in with your honest feelings about the situation and sharing that, like, you know, there are a multitude of perspectives about what's happening in the world right now, and that at the end of the day, you can have feelings about all of those perspectives, but acknowledge that they all exist. And I think that sometimes kids feel like they have an opinion, but they're not sure if they should share it. And if they do, it's the response is something very intense or opposite to the opinion or disagreeing with the opinion. So I think that the goal is really to have open communication, allowing for a multitude of perspectives to be shared and letting kids feel comfortable sharing.
Absolutely. So we're close to wrapping up, but my last question for everybody, I'd love if everyone could go along and talk about the number one thing that you feel like we as adults, parents, caregivers, grown-ups, policymakers can do to support youth health. Eric.
I would say, number one is destigmatize, and then number two is just let's create those goals around what we want to, how we want the world to be different. And if we can articulate that and then share that with our teams, whether on a corporation or in a government, wherever you are, let's hold ourselves accountable to that.
Yeah, I think that healthy habits, and in the home, establishing boundaries, but also establishing routines. And I think what came out of the pandemic was that we got spun around and felt like we didn't have the routines that we were accustomed to. I think that we all thrive in knowing that we have a set schedule. That's what we work on as adults, and I think kids more so. So establishing the routines in their daily life, establishing the boundaries in their level of engagement on social media as well.
I think for probably my number one piece of advice for parents is you don't have to be perfect, and that you are not expected to know everything. I think a lot of times, I hear it from industry, I hear it from caregivers. If you see something, go talk to your parent about it or a trusted caregiver. I'm a parent. I don't have all the answers, right? So don't feel like you have to be perfect. There are resources. There are wonderful, wonderful agencies and resources that you can go to learn more about it. But give yourself a little bit of slack and breathe. And
it takes a village, right? It doesn't always have to be on your shoulders, hopefully.
So if there's one thing that I would love to be able to do is move the discussion so that we're focusing on the preventative as well as the treatment. Right? Because we have a society right now where 25 to 50% of people are dealing with mental health issues, diagnosable mental health issues, and they're having a hard time getting treatment. But we're not talking about the 50% that could be helped too. How do we focus on them? How do we give them the tools? Resilience, for instance, how do we develop that so they don't develop diagnosable mental health conditions? That's a big focus that I would love to see happen over the next few years.
Amen. All right, panelists, thank you so much for joining us today. I thought this was a great discussion, and thanks everybody in the audience for attending and everyone online. I hope that we all kind of have a nice, calm future and look ahead to an optimistic time as parents, and we can only just do our best. I think that was my biggest takeaway. You don't have to be perfect. We can only try our best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In this video, Miso Ponyo, a 3D generalist at Roblox, takes you step by step on how to finalize and optimize your custom characters in order to import them into Studio. To set the stage for the demo, she'll start by giving context on the history of avatar and character creation, along with an overview of the process and the technical requirements involved. This one's a bit long, so feel free to use the timestamps to jump around to the following topics. For more information, be sure to check out the resources in the description.
Hello everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join in on this presentation about making an avatar. My Roblox handle is Miso Ponyo, and I've been at Roblox for 3 years, and I'm a 3D generalist on the Alpha Strike team. In this presentation, I'll be going over the process and the creative and technical decisions that currently go into making a character and clothing on our platform, as well as clear up some confusion and misconceptions. In this video, we're going to be covering the following. First, we'll be covering what is an avatar. Second is a creation overview. You'll learn how is an avatar typically created, including how long the process takes, the general steps, and the types of software and workflows required. Third, we'll also be covering the various technical requirements for a Roblox avatar. Fourth is a practical walkthrough where I show you the general process through our DCC tools all the way through to importing into Studio. And then optional, we have a lot of great documentation and downloadable resources, which is linked in the video description. So in order to comprehend where we are now, it's essential to grasp the history that has brought us here. Where the term avatar originates. Avatar comes from the Sanskrit word avatara, which literally means descent. The early uses of the term was first used in a computer game by the Plato role-playing game Avatar in 1979. In Norman Spinrad's novel Songs from the Stars in 1980, the term avatar is used in a description of a computer-generated virtual experience. The term avatar for the on-screen user representation debuted in a computer game Ultima 4, Quest of the Avatar in 1985. Richard Garriott, the game designer, aimed for players to embody their real selves in the virtual world and emphasize player responsibility due to ethical considerations in the story. Fast forward from the origin of Avatar, these past few decades we've been utilizing 2D and 3D avatars to explore different digital personas of ourselves through the internet, on social media, web forums, and video games. So, an avatar is a character. Well, not quite. A character is a representation of a person in a narrative or dramatic work of art. An avatar is a computer or game user's representation of themselves or alter ego. A character is a representation of a person, whereas an avatar is a representation of the player or artist. A 3D character artist for games is someone that has a strong foundation in anatomy and figure sculpting, and whose primary job is creating characters and creatures from a concept to a fully realized game-ready character. As a 3D generalist, I'm the closest thing to a character artist at Roblox. A 3D generalist means we're pretty general in what we can do. We tend to be a jack of all trades, master of none type of artist. We're capable of creating characters, props, and environments and managing various facets of the 3D production process. How long does a character take to create? A highly detailed, realistic character can take up to 2 or more months to create, even for an experienced character artist in the game industry. It could take 10 hours if you're making the Roblox noob, or it could take 400 hours depending on how much detail, functionality, and iterations you put into your character. Making a character for Marketplace. This part of the presentation, I'll be covering creating an R15 avatar with layered clothing and rigid accessories and digital content creation to Studio with the workflow that is currently available to our developers. Software used in workflow definitions. ZBrush is where you create your high-resolution mesh by sculpting a subdivided mesh. Maya, modeling. Create a low-resolution mesh or mesh by retopology that's game-ready from your high-resolution mesh. UV mapping, the flat surface representation of a 3D model used to wrap textures. Rigging, creating a skeleton for a 3D model so it can move. Skinning, binding the actual 3D mesh to the joint setup you created. Caging, a cage is a wrap deformer that defines the inner and outer surfaces of your asset, and it corresponds to an avatar in layered clothing. Facts, animated isolated facial movements that when used together can create any facial expression. Substance Painter. Baking. Transferring the data from your high resolution to your low resolution mesh. Texturing. Plug in your baked out mesh maps in Substance Painter to create your final textures. Studio. Integrating a game-ready character to run in real time. Component requirements. Traditionally, an artist only has to worry about the final look of a character, including all the clothes and accessories the character is expected to have. In Roblox, especially when creating an avatar character for the marketplace, a character artist has to create every component that makes up a character. Example, the whole body, each piece of clothing, and accessories. Mesh requirements. R15 avatars need to be broken up into 15 body part meshes and capped at open ends instead of being a single mesh. The reason Marketplace requires this is so body parts can be swapped out with another character's body part. Issues that can happen. Vertex normal seams or texture seams can occur at part connections, edges or vertices not lining up correctly between each part. Normals on a body with parts aren't consistent with a body that's one contiguous mesh. Mesh budget requirements. The mesh budget for marketplace assets has a strict budget of just over 10K triangles for avatars, and 4K triangle budget for each layered clothing and accessory. The 10K budget for avatars isn't calculated as a whole and is split up into separate budgets for the head, arms, torso, and legs. For example, though this character as a whole is under 10K triangles, their arms are over budget for the arms budget. Texture budget requirements. Characters and layered clothing are capped at a 1024 by 1024 texture size and also requires the artist to break up each component into a separate texture set, which our avatar system requires. Color tinting in single material. Color tinting is the process of adding transparency to your textures, making the base color of your mesh visible. This is most commonly used for skin tones. The way to achieve color tinting in video is by creating a transparent PNG where you're limited to one area that can be tinted. The artist has to create a transparent area where they want the color to come through and take a palette, as well as overlaying enough color, shaded, and highlighted details so the character doesn't appear dead or flat, but not enough where it affects the color you're picking so it accurately reflects the color. This can be difficult to balance and get right. Cage requirements. Characters and layered clothing requires a corresponding cage with every creation. Caging a character, where you encompass your character with a multi-part cage that just covers the surface. Each cage mesh corresponds to each body part. Cage mesh topology should be as evenly distributed as possible. Mistakes that can occur are cage parts not matching up with body parts, editing the UVs accidentally on the cage or altering the vertex count, cage not completely covering the body and is intersecting. This will cause hidden surface removal to calculate incorrectly. Cage is too inflated and will make the clothes look puffy. Caging layered clothing, where you create clothing to an inner cage. Define the outer limits for the outer cage by encompassing the clothing to just cover the surface. Outer cage mesh topology should match the inner cage mesh distribution to mitigate distortion. Mistakes that can occur are the inner and outer cage have intersections. This could cause hidden surface removal to calculate incorrectly. Clothing fitting too far away from the inner cage will cause it to look too puffy. Editing the UVs accidentally on the cage or altering the vertex count. Quick reminder, there are links to our documentation and resources in the video description where we supply a multi and single mesh cage file for our creators. Rigging and skinning requirements. Roblox expects only 15 joints on their body if they want to create an R15 avatar. Rigging. We provide a 15 joint rig for our devs to move into position on their own character. The dynamic head rig we require them to create on their own since the amount of joints needed can differ. Joints and attachments can have a translation value, but with scale and rotation frozen. Attachments have to be in correct locations. Left and right grip attachments are the only ones that should have a X positive rotation value of 90 for holding swords and guns. Skinning. Skinning is something our devs have to define on their own. One bind pose only with a 4-joint maximum influence. No weighting to the root or humanoid root node. Skinning is tougher to balance the weighting between separate body part meshes. Naming requirements for Roblox. The naming schema is very strict and Studio's importer will not recognize a character as an R15 avatar unless it follows it. Meshes, cages, backs, joints, and attachment points require exact naming. Even when you correct the name in the importer, it doesn't fix the issue and you have to fix it in DCC. If the cage or attachment name is wrong, the indication that it's wrong is because the cage or attachment is rendered. Naming schema is slightly different between layered clothing and R15 avatars. For avatars, it requires body part name and postfix_geo, but for layered clothing, the postfix_geo isn't needed and the prefix needs to match the cage's name. Dynamic head backs. facial acting coding system. FACS is a comprehensive anatomically based system for describing all visually discernible facial movement. Animated isolated facial movements that when used together can create any facial expression. Each frame has a keyed face shape and DCC, and we require a minimum of 17 to be made, which can go up to the 100s if also creating corrective combined shapes. A creator has to add attributes to the head of each frame and the corresponding face pose made. Studio and Marketplace. Our avatar system is very powerful and makes it easy to use right out of the box and work with everything. For example, all animations, emotes, layered clothing, and rigid accessories all work automatically with creating a character using this schema. The downfall is that it doesn't allow for much deviation if you want to use some aspects of the tech for an inexperienced character only. For example, a dev wants to make a single mesh body with a higher fidelity rig, but they also want to use the caging tech for clothes and the default animations. Right now, this wouldn't be supported. In conclusion, creating avatars and characters for Roblox is a unique process that involves a deep understanding of both artistic and technical elements and can be a bit challenging. However, with the right tools, knowledge, and attention to detail, they can bring vibrant and engaging characters to life, enriching the Roblox experience for millions of players worldwide. Keep in mind that we're working on a lot of exciting technology to make this easier and approachable, even for non-artists, to begin putting their imagination to life. This part of the presentation is where I'll touch on some of the things I've covered so far in a live demo. I'll briefly go over the DCC workflows before integrating the avatar into Studio and touching on some of the tools needed to complete your avatar.
So first off, we want to start with our high resolution mesh. And I created this in ZBrush, and there's other 3D applications you can definitely use in place of this, but just wanted to show like the breakdown, which I kind of covered in my presentation, where you actually have to create every level and component. So starting off with like the base body, it has to be sort of fully realized and look complete without clothing on, and with a modesty layer included. And then on top of that, you gotta model each component of the clothing. So the top, the bottom, the shoes, anything else you want to include. And they have to look complete and work well on its own, not as a whole. So that also creates a little bit more work when planning on creating character. And then we also have the third level, which I parsed out as the rigid accessories. And so that uses a little bit of a different tech where you're not using rigging and skinning. So that has to be like connected in a different way in Studio, but just separate out each of these pieces. So together it'll make a fully realized avatar. This character here is 103.05 million points, which is verts. And yeah, you can't just, export this out and import it into Studio and expect it to run in real time. So what we would do from here is decimate the mesh to a more reasonable amount of verts, and then retopo. All right, so once you've decimated your mesh in ZBrush, you can export it out and import it into a 3D application of your choice. You would do this for all your different parts for your avatar. In this case, I just chose to do a hair because just to simplify things so we didn't, overcomplicate the scene here with retopoing. So what I usually will do is just like retopo each individual asset. So, or bring it in separate just so I don't bog down Maya with too many verts. Because right now, even decimated, this is at 500,000 verts, which is still pretty high. I sometimes will do 2 versions where I'll even decimate it further for just like a retopo version, and then keep a higher version for baking my high resolution to my low resolution mesh. So yeah, right now it's still too high to run in real time. So we're gonna create a low resolution mesh. So first off, I mean, every 3D application will do this slightly differently, but you will have tools to be able to do some retopology. So we're gonna create a live surface. And now you can see it's now in a live state. And then you want to navigate to this modeling toolkit tab and click on the quad draw. From here, I always kind of have to review my shortcuts because I don't get to retopo too often. So I tend to forget which hotkeys to use. So that's a great little cheat sheet. But here, I would also want to consider the surface offset. I think 0.02 is like a good start, but we can always adjust that later. So essentially, to start retopoing, you can draw your verts dots, and I got 4 here, and then you hold down Shift to actually draw that surface. So I'm gonna continue to do that. And you can see that it will definitely take a while to complete this whole hair by retopoing. But yeah, we'll continue to draw out my, sometimes it lags. Yeah, that's why I recommend to sometimes decimate your high resolution mesh even further, just so your 3D application doesn't lag when you're trying to create your low res mesh. All right, and I don't want to bore you too much with retopoing this whole mesh, but this is some of the process tools. So right now, I'm holding down Tab plus middle mouse button to drag and extrude. That's a good way to like extend your mesh when you're retopoing, and then as well as like taking individual extrusions to cover the surface and make sure you're capturing the silhouette of your high resolution mesh. All right. But yeah, you can see how I would go in here and maybe like move my dots a little bit better. It's definitely a little thin there, so it's moving off the surface. You can left mouse click to move your verts into place. But yeah, that's the start of retopoing, and you would want to do it until you covered the whole surface of your mesh. Let me get out of quad draw, and you can see like that's my new resolution mesh I've started. I'm going to hide that and actually show you what the actual retopo version looks like. You can see here, if I get out of live and then click on my low resolution mesh, it is just over 1,000 verts and then just over 2,000 tries. So that's a much more reasonable vert count, triangle count to have for a game ready asset versus, you know, a ZBrush that has millions of points. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that low resolution mesh. And then from here, I would want to do my UVing. In Maya, we have a UV editor tab, and I would open that up, which I actually have UV distortion checked on. I like to check that on just to check to make sure my UVs aren't getting too distorted. So making sure it's not too blue or red where it's getting distorted, but like in the white range. It's okay if it leans towards either a little bit, just not as too much. So for UV editing, usually this will come in like when you first open up your UV editor, it will be a complete like mess or just like one single mesh. So what I will do is actually determine where these seams should be, and I would use my UV tools to do that. Every UV tool in 3D applications are different, so just marking out where my seams would be. So I would want to hide it where you can't see. So underneath the hair would be a good place to place a seam. In the hairband, I would want to place a seam. And then anywhere it's like where you want to avoid too much distortion in your UVs is somewhere you can't really help. So sometimes having not so well placed seams, so you just kind of have to do. So like, yeah, underneath here. And then from there, you would unwrap it and then lay it in the 0 to 1 space. And then I'll toggle that UV distortion on. So yeah, looks pretty good. You get a little bit of distortion in certain areas, but for the most part, it's better to keep larger pieces where you don't have too many seams. So you don't get any like baking errors or noticeable texture seams. So from there, once I'm done, got my low res mesh, my UVs, I would want to export my low resolution mesh. So export selection, go into wherever I want to put this. I'm just going to put it as a temp file because I already have this exported out. All right, and then we would go on to the baking process of baking a high resolution mesh to a low resolution mesh. All right, I now have Substance Painter open, and this is where I'm going to begin showing you the process of baking from high resolution mesh to a low resolution mesh, taking what we just did in Maya. You can also do this in other applications, even Maya, 3ds Max, Blender. I actually prefer the big textures in Marmoset, but just the ease of switching between applications, I'm just going to do it in Substance Painter. So first off, go to File, New, and you're going to choose your template here. Roblox actually has a template you can use, which basically makes it easy for you to just output the compatible textures for Studio. So I'm going to choose that. Normal map format is OpenGL, and I'm going to start with like a 2048 because I'm going to, yeah, I'll be outputting a 1024 texture at the largest, but I always like to work a size larger than a 10K. Right, so we're going to select my low res mesh that I want to start texturing. I haven't baked any maps in an outside application, so everything else looks good. So I'm going to hit OK. Right, and here's my just my mesh, and I'm going to go to either here the croissant, or you can go to texture set settings and then scroll down and big mesh maps here. So you got two options. I'm going to click on here. So we got our low resolution mesh here, and I'm going to import my high resolution mesh, which sometimes I have a hard time finding. Where is it? High definition meshes. Here you go. There we go. And I'm going to select my high res. All right. So you can see here, my high resolution mesh has loaded, and it's already kind of offset the cage accordingly to make sure it covers the whole surface and includes it for transferring the resolution mesh to the low resolution mesh, even though there's some intersections happening. All right. Basically, you want to make sure there's like no red, which there's a little bit of red. So I'm probably going to offset it a little bit more. Right, gauge surface opacity, max frontal distance. I'm gonna offset this a little bit. That way we get rid of any of the red. All right, look pretty good. All right, and now I'm gonna make sure I have all the textures. I want to bake out normal world. ID isn't really necessary because I haven't really assigned different materials to it. Check that off. All right, that looks good. And I'm gonna output this. Actually, it makes sense for me to do it at 1024. I was thinking of a character where I would output it at 1024 as the final. So 2048 is a little bit large of a canvas for this hair. I would actually export this out as a 512. So this baking the mesh maps at a 1024 makes sense. All right, and then I'm gonna hit bake selected textures. You can see just going through and baking all the mesh maps I will use to actually create my final textures. And then once that's done, I'm gonna reach the painting mode. And then actually want to change my canvas size to 1024 just to make sure, you know, I don't have any issues with it lagging. No point in working at a larger canvas size if I'm actually not utilizing it. All right, so yeah, you can see there's some baking errors. Definitely could be a little bit better. Let me see what kind of went wrong. Looks like not including maybe the rear distance as much as it should. Might try and bake that out again. Seems like maybe that's helping. Yep, that looks a little bit better. So you might need to make some adjustments to make sure there's no baking errors. Yeah, that looks a lot better. All right, so there we have it. We have all our mesh maps, which you can actually go to this drop down and look at all your mesh maps and like view them to make sure there's no sort of baking errors. I like to kind of scroll through them just to make sure so no ID map, ambient occlusion looks good, curvature, and position, thickness. Basically, everything we'll need to create a procedural texture, final texture. All right. Yeah, this looks pretty good. Got some baking errors, but I'm gonna ignore that and say it's good enough. All right. So fast forward, and we got now our final textures done on this hair, and it's looking pretty good. If you actually go through each single channel texture, it gives you a good breakdown of each one and how it looks. So here's your base color, and I personally like to actually bake in enough lighting, just so if your lighting gets dropped, the quality of that, or surface appearance with PBR textures, like if you lose your metalness, roughness, and your normal map, that overall, like as a base color texture, it will still read. This is good for like the lower end devices, so just something to keep in mind. And then from here, nothing is metallic, so black is correct in this case. Roughness, I like to bake in a good amount of like lighting and detail just to help vary the surface detail. That's a preference I have. And then we got the normal plus height mesh. So a good amount of painted in like surface detail, which really helps the overall asset to read. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the results of this. But yeah, just to break down too, like everything else for this character that's been textured, this is sort of the final result in Substance Painter. And each UV and texture is separated out to be its own component for each asset. So the bow, the shirt, and everything has its own UV sheet. And then just to go over quickly, I'm going to click on the actual body. Substance Painter gets a little slow when you have a lot of different layers. All right, so looking at the actual skin texture, I'll show you what it looked like originally. So it definitely looked a lot better and had a lot more painted in detail in the original opaque version, but I created a version that was tintable. So if I turn off opaque, you can see that like you're seeing it as a gray texture, which is just filling in the background with that. But if you actually go to like base color, you can see this is actually a transparent texture that I created with overlaying detail. So the character skin doesn't look too flat or dead with not including enough detail in color. So the skin looks alive. So yeah, if I go back to material and then swap out some of these other colors, you can see that the underlying color fills it in with the palette that I want. So this is a good way to test before bringing into studio how your overlaying color will look with different colors underneath it. So it's good to go through here and just sort of like test out a lot of different colors to make sure whatever you're overlaying in terms of color and baked in lighting isn't affecting the overall color underneath too drastically. That's one of the things that's very hard to get right, because if you tune it specifically for a certain color, it could be difficult for it to look good on another color. So just keep that in mind if you want to create a tintable texture. So I'm going to check all these off. So first and foremost, exporting out a transparent PNG has a little bit of a different process. I'm going to go here to File and then go to Export Textures. And I'll usually do this separately just because it's a different process. There might be another way to actually do this, but I do it with using document channels with alpha. And then essentially I'm just wanting the base color texture. And then 8 bits or 8 bits and dithering, which it's a little bit better to choose 8 bits and dithering for transparent PNG, just to smooth it out just in general. So this looks good, and then I'm going to hit export, and I have all these other ones checked off because I only want to export out my transparent PNG. So here we go, and then you can see here that the transparent PNG is has like a black background, so that's kind of why it looks sort of brown. But if you were to bring it in like Photoshop, you can see that this is actually like transparent. So once I have that, then I go back here, and then I actually Control-Shift-E to export my textures, and then check my global settings, and I want to switch this to either your Roblox export settings, or I have actually my own that I created, but either one will work fine. And then I usually have this based on the texture set sizes. So everything that's sort of dictated here, it will export it out at those sizes, just making it a little bit easier. All right. And then also you could override it with your own settings, but in this case for the Nature Archer Girl, I don't want to export out a base color since I already did that. But for everything else, it has an opaque texture. So I'm going to export it out, and then got all of your textures. Makes it very easy just to export it all at once and get the correct size and the naming. That's what I actually did. With my own export, I actually set it up with the naming I want. And then I also dictate that in my texture set list. So that's why I kind of use my own preset template. All right, that about covers it for texturing in Substance Painter. Just a quick overview. All right, so now that our textures are all done, I'm going to be taking you back into Maya and going over the process of setting up your character before exporting it out and importing it into Studio. So just to kind of go over what usually kind of would be done, or at least when you first retopo your character, you're going to be retopoing a single mesh where it's not broken up into the 15 components and capped at each end. So this is kind of what it would look like. And then so if I hide that and go into my 15 part version, you can see here each body part, like the arm is broken up into 3 components: torso, lower torso, right and left leg. And if you hide one of them, you can see that it is got these rounded sort of caps, and on each side it is capped and watertight. So this is a little bit more work, but it's kind of essential since we need it to work with our avatar system, and you can be able to swap out different body parts and not see into the inside of the mesh. So that's why we cap it. So corresponding with these 15 body parts, we also need the cage to correspond. So yeah, expects the exact naming, and the naming corresponds with the cage as well. So if you see here, and I'll go in X-ray mode, it should line up exactly to each body part. So you can have a little bit of wiggle room. It's not like completely exact. So I think the reason why I decided to actually extend it a little bit past is for better clothing fit. But it needs to be pretty close to where it lines up in order for the hidden surface removal to work in Studio, which that whole system is, it will hide the underlying surface when you actually wear clothing on top of your body. And it uses this sort of cage to calculate that. So if we go back, so if you look at the overall cage, you will see too that it's a really close fit to cover the surface of the body of the avatar. This ensures that clothing fits as best as possible, and then also that it covers the underlying surface really well. So just enough to cover it, but not enough where it's too puffy. So let me hide that. Actually, go over this. I make a separate version of all the cage parts, but when we have it set up in the files we give you a cage for the character where it's set up with all the body part cages, and then it's driven by a deformer. So this is the deformer, and it's a single mesh. And the reason why we do that is just it makes it easier to edit these 15 objects that are separate. And so if we move along the seams, you can see here, I'll hide it, and you can see the cage part, the separate cage parts are also moved with it. So that way it's like you're not editing and you're creating holes in your cage mesh accidentally. I know we don't have that set up in Blender, but I think it's because we don't. Blender doesn't really support this, having a wrap deformer drive the individual parts. So that's why I usually make a version. There's a version of this, and then I basically delete history, and then I make a separate version of it when I go to export, just to keep it separate. So covering that, and then if we go over our cage, not our cage, our rig, you can see here I positioned it to correspond with my mesh. And then we got the face rig as well to correspond with that. We provide a base R15 rig, but we do not give you sort of a base face rig, just because it can always vary depending on the type of character you're creating. But some of the templates, I mean, they have that, since you can edit the mesh and whatnot to a certain extent, and it preserve all the face shapes that's created. So you can always just grab it from there and have something to at least work with. Remove joints, add joints, however you like to at least give you a good start. So that's our rig, and you can see here everything is sort of weighted accordingly. Selecting the mesh. There you go. A nice fall off. You can see there the weighting between the part connections. There's no gapping that's happening, and that can be a little tough. You gotta weight it exactly the same amount between the two different verts. And then I'm gonna hide the joints so you can see this, but if you go through, you can see all the fax controllers that's been added to the face, the fax shapes that's been added to the face. And if I click on my head, you have to do this as well in Blender. But if you go to Head Geo, Extra Attributes, this is where you add the actual face shape names to each frame that corresponds to each face shape. And this is what Studio uses in order to understand what face shape you're creating. And then you have your combined face shapes, sort of corrective shapes when certain shapes that are used together, they're causing issues. It's just a good way to have cleaner results. So now that I am done that, I'm gonna hide that. Oh, here's my accessories. So each accessory has, for layered clothing, has an inner and outer cage, and you see they're kind of named accordingly to each thing. So if I go to hide all of this, and then hide everything else, only what corresponds, and then my rigid accessories, which they don't need cages. They just get attached using the attachment points. They don't use the rig or skinning data. So let me show you this. And so these are my pants. All right, so my pants here. And so it is created to the inner cage here. And I'm using the outer cage of my character as a base. So this way it will fit pretty perfectly to the character I'm creating it to. And then it will also work on anything else caged. It might not look the best, it might get a little distorted, but at least I know anything that's close to the proportions to this character, or anything on this character is going to fit nicely because it's made to it. And then the outer cage is just defining the outer limit, so it knows how to layer on top of this when you wear something over it. So let's say the shirt is worn over the pants, it knows that it needs to offset it a bit based off of this outer cage limit. And you're only supposed to edit just to cover your clothing. So everything else should stay the same. So if you like kind of toggle between the two, you can see the only thing I change is to cover my layered clothing pants. And I did this for everything else that's layered clothing. And then quickly go over rigid accessories. This is how I organize things, but you don't necessarily need to have it in these sort of group names. Just keeps me from losing track of everything. My rigid accessories, and I hid the overall folder. Let me hide my cages. So these are all of my rigid accessories. And you can see here, there's no corresponding cages. There is no weighting or rig that it is bound to. So yeah, this is just me organizing it, but just make sure the placement is correct, even though you actually have to redo the placement in Studio, but I like to see how everything looks together. So everything looks good. I think I'm ready to export. One thing I didn't really go over, this is completely optional, but I like to set up everything using a standard surface where you can plug in all your textures, your PBR textures. So you got your normal map, metal, roughness, albedo. This doesn't need to be named in any sort of way. It just needs to be plugged into the corresponding slot. So everything looks good here. So that way I don't have to set this up in Studio. All right, so let me gather everything I'm going to export. I like to unhide everything. You don't necessarily have to do that. The other thing too, I have all my attachment points set up. They need to just be halfway emerged into the mesh of your body. That way it knows how to attach all of the legacy rigid accessories that are on Marketplace. And this also will correspond to any of your rigid accessories you are attaching to your character. So hide everything. And I'm going to select everything and then export selected. And I already have this exported out, so this is just me kind of going through the process. So this is sort of the settings I typically will use. Smoothing groups, smooth mesh, tangent binormals, reference asset content is fine. You want to have deform models checked on, skin, blend shapes, animation. We're using, I guess you don't really need blend shapes. We're not using that, but whatever, I'll keep it on. Then FBX 2020 is fine, binary. You don't have to embed media, but if you want everything to be embedded with your model, that's also kind of nice to have. Makes your file bigger. All right, exported. And now I'll be going over into Studio to show you the rest of the process. All right, so now that we exported out of Maya, I opened up Studio and we're gonna now import in our character. I've already done so you can see all the examples just here in the viewport, but I'll go through the process and have all my accessories set up. But it's kind of how I organize things in general. So go to Avatar, import 3D, then navigate to your file, your FBX file. And I know Studio 2 now supports GLTF, which it's more of a Blender format. And then we should get this file dialog and see your preview of your character with all its clothing on. You got your accessories here, my joints, sort of everything that was named and organized in Maya. We got some warnings here, just gonna kind of look at them. So I look at some of them just to kind of make sure. I seem to get these warnings a lot where it tells me cage vertices intersect with clothing or there's unnecessary cage edits. In my case, I kind of know this is not correct, but always kind of good to go over to see why. I don't know why it's saying modified UV map. That's a new one. Definitely didn't modify the UV map. I know it's not watertight because these cage parts aren't watertight, but I guess it's necessary for it to tell me that error. But I know my eyelashes and eyebrows are not watertight, which is fine. Gotta go in here. So we got some warnings on some of the face shapes, just telling me that it's kind of near identical to the neutral pose, which it's not. I guess it's just having a hard time telling the difference in the validation. So we'll go ahead and ignore that. My face control, so yeah, same sort of warning about that. But for the most part, I think everything is good. So I'm going to go to the top where I can see everything. And from here, I have my clothing with it. But I'm going to define it as an R15 rig because it's using this schema with the 15 parts, the 15 joint rig with the face controls and the fax data. So R15, my rig scale. So this is where it gets a little confusing. This is kind of just establishing the baseline as to how rigid legacy accessories on Marketplace, and then any of my rigid accessories too, knows how to scale to other body part scales. So if I define this as a character that's gotten a little more normal proportions, so Arthur narrow, which means, the proportion size kind of like falls in this range, and the shoulders are a little more narrow, whereas like the hips are a little bit more large. Whereas Arthur would correspond more so for more like masculine or like normal proportions. And then default is our classic proportions. So anything blocky, shorter, stocky would kind of fall into these that scale type. So I'm going to choose Arthur narrow because that's the closest scale type. And you can see it doesn't really change anything. It just kind of like gives it a value. So it knows from that how to scale these accessories on Marketplace to it. All right, and it's successfully imported. Very cool. And yeah, you can see now like my skin tone isn't dark anymore, whereas like a transparent PNG, it's sort of blending it between like a black background. And this is utilizing our brick color sort of, so it's flooding the transparent PNG with that. So one of the things I'll do is first I'll actually take out all of my accessories, put it in my workspace, and then I'll select all of my body parts and I'll change it to a color I prefer as my base. All right, That looks good. But yeah, also good to go in here and check to make sure like all the colors look pretty good. Okay, so yeah, this is like ready to go for in terms of just the body, but we actually want to attach all these accessories. And one of the things I did do, I usually do, is actually I'll add the attachment points to the layered clothing. So if I establish these attachment points from the body, then I don't actually have to establish it using some of these tools. So I can go here and just kind of like convert it to an accessory. These were already converted, but essentially, if I give it an established attachment point, which I can show you what it looks like. Body front attachment for a shirt. I can just go ahead, select all my layered clothing, accessories. That's not layered clothing, shoe left, right. Yep. And then click on create accessory, and it will tell me here, it's like, I don't have following was skipped because the incorrect object type. Okay, maybe I can't bulk do it, but usually it will tell me basically I don't have the accessory. You know what? Actually, I'm going to put it in a group. Here you go. Yeah, there you go. It wasn't the right model group. It was just a mesh part. So yeah, now it will tell me there's no suitable attachment point that could be found in a nature Archer Girl shirt. So in order to actually attach these, I would go to shirt, go to accessory fitting tool, click on my shirt, and then go through the process of defining what it is as an accessory type. It's a shirt. This should not apply to layered clothing. This only really applies to rigid accessories. But regardless, I'll have it match my my import. What is it? Arthur Narrow selection. So realistic, slender. I think we're in the process of changing some of these names, so it might be a little confusing how it corresponds. All right, and now in here you can see it just chooses like a default sort of blocky, which I actually want to see it on my character. So I am going to select my character here and add it to the palette. And then I can switch over and see how my shirt looks on my character. And I'm happy with that. And then I generate mesh part accessory. So here it is. It's converted it into an accessory type. I got the all the correct properties added to it. Like I said, this is actually not needed. You could delete it if you want to, but it doesn't really matter. So that way I can drag or copy. I like to copy and paste a lot. Makes it a little more easy. And then paste it into my character and see how it fits. Looks good. So I would go ahead and do that for every layered clothing accessory. So yeah, once that's done, I would go ahead and go on to the rigid accessories. So let me click on a rigid accessory and kind of show you the process. Would love the option just to be able to add an attachment point from DCC and be able to like use the create accessory button, but it doesn't, it needs like a lot more information than layered clothing does. So you kind of have to take it through this process. It doesn't just rely on the attachment point. So one of the annoying things is that it does position your accessory, and it doesn't retain the sort of position from your character. But so this is an accessory. I want to define it as a hat. Looks like it actually did bring it up a bit. I'm wondering if they fixed it now that it will actually correspond to my position that I have it at. This is where it's important. You actually want to define your body type here. And that's slender. And I'm going to select my character. And my preview window. I'm going to move it back to where I want it. Not quite. It looks like it's sort of off from how I had it placed here. Right. Yeah, it's off-centered. So essentially, we're getting better tools to replace this, so it'd be more just like a conversion once you bring in the studio, so you don't have to do this process. But for right now, we require this. So move it over, and it doesn't matter how it looks on this sort of mannequin here. You want to look at it here to make sure it's fitting your character how you want. So I'm going to say I'm happy with that. And then I'll generate the mesh accessory, which converts it to a accessory here. Got my hat. I'm going to copy that and paste it onto my character. See how it attaches. All right, that looks good. So I would do that for the rest of my rigid accessories. And then once I'm done, I'd copy all of my accessories that I created and paste it onto, or drag and drop onto my character here. I also like to go in here and give it a layering order. If you go on the wrap deformer itself, you can actually order it, and so it will actually layer correctly. So in this case, I wanted the boots to go over the pants, so I gave it a higher layering order than my pants, so order 5. All right, so everything looks good. I'm happy with how everything attached. So now I'm going to copy, paste, and I'm going to rename this as starter character. We have tools too now that make it easier. The avatar setup tool. You can also test your character. They make it easy where you can just test in place. But this is kind of how I do it. So renamed it starter character. I hit F5. And now I just want to test my character and run around and make sure it looks okay. Yeah, it looks good. I'm not going to be able to see the facts data. So, yeah, I have to actually publish the place, and then I can test it there. So what I'll do is I'll publish to Roblox, and then I'll play it through the browser. All right, so now that we've published to Roblox, I want to test in client just so we can see how the face shapes look. So I'm going to hit play, and that will open up the player. All right, now that my player is open, I'm going to run around and check out how my character looks. You can see like it's just using sort of default blinking emotes to drive the face rig and the face shapes that we created. So what I want to do is go here, and I want to turn on my camera, resume, and that way you can see and test your characters' face shapes and expression and make sure they look good. So I just kind of do exaggerated expressions and make sure it looks good. There's not any sort of any weirdness happening or intersections. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the results. Weighting looks good. Everything looks attached correctly. But yeah, that basically covers it from start to finish, from DCC to studio, the whole process. And yeah, I hope this will help you. And when you go to create your own avatar for Roblox and your own accessories and layered clothing. All right, it's been great. All right.